that's a layup. Temptation, couldn't even face it. 40 days and nights and still proclaiming the kingdom. Back by the king of kings, let a lot of us. Every time we get involved, it's a dialogue. By the fall, ain't no drug. It ain't even close, hold on. Faith, 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 faith. Ain't even close, hold on. Faith, 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 favor. Tiptoeing with this faith of mine. Big stepper, yeah, yeah. Big stepper, yeah. Back by the king of kings, let a lot of us. Every time we get involved, it's a dub. By the fall, ain't no drug. It ain't even close, oh Lord. It ain't even close. It ain't even close, oh Lord. It ain't even close. All praise to the Most High. It ain't even close. It ain't even close. It ain't even close. No, no, no.
The World Economic Forum is now very much engaged into this initiative of shaping a great reset for the post-corona era. And of course, the objective of this reset is to make the world more resilient, more sustainable, and also more fair and more inclusive.
We have many demographic changes that are also changing the nature of work. Climate refugees should also have decent and good job opportunities. As co-chair of the Education and Employment Steering Committee, while also advocating for more inclusive workplaces. But of course, to actually deliver this reset of the social contract, we need to trust each other, we need multi-stakeholder collaboration, and we need to be willing to adapt.
Only by shifting power to communities of color can we really create this more equitable and just and inclusive society. So I call on everyone to make a commitment today to do your part to be a co-conspirator for justice.
I think the key narrative which we should have is to move from a society which is built on production and consumption to a society which is built on caring and sharing.
We have entered a new era of globalization. We have shifted from a market-driven globalization to a politically power-driven globalization. And we have to draw all the consequences of that. I think that we need to have a global approach. That's good thing that the United States of President Biden have decided to invest in the green industry and have decided to accelerate the fight against climate change, and Europe must do the same thing.
We need to challenge narratives of stigma and demonization, for instance, of Albanians in parts of Europe, including my own country. And we also need to recognize that educational opportunities and the availability of opportunities for young people has a huge bearing.
There are certain governments that are picking the topic up, but too many are just going eyes shut. This is all an indication for me on how this topic is just not being given the attention that it should. We talk about the future of labor migration. It's the present of migration that we need to look at and just finally look ourselves in the mirror. All government representatives, I call on you. We need migrants.
The losers in this space are those who provide protectionism in their countries, right? If there's protectionism, not allowing the visas, not allowing people to work, right? Making it difficult for people to work in those countries, whether it's, from a refugee perspective, whether it's kind of a forced migration. How much does that benefit the home country as well as that host country? Because maybe you stay, potentially you're bringing good jobs to it. You potentially are, may move back home, but then have a network of great workers in that country that build up, Western jobs in that place. And so that collaboration absolutely needs to take place.
Britain topping the charts. It's been a long time since we won anything, but it's not exactly what we want to be winning, which is apparently apparently the biggest surge in immigration of any rich country last year. A total of 746,900 new permanent-type migrants moved to the UK last year. These are eye-watering figures.
75% of respondents saying that Ireland has taken in too many refugees. In other words, Ireland is full. I don't think Ireland is full, and I appreciate, if these poll results are to be believed, that I'm in a minority when I say that, and people are going to immediately get in touch and accuse me of being some sort of woke virtue signaller, that the talent pool does not exist in this country. There are not enough Irish people to fill the vacancies in the jobs market.
We're just fed up with the Irish government. They're just fed up with them. It's like a mass plantation what they're doing here. There's so many unvetted male people being brought over to this country, and they're planting them all in around schools, parks, and we're all feeling very unsafe. We're worried for our children.
This is exactly what people mean when they talk about the Uniparty, because you have the Tories, you have the Labour Party. On every issue that matters for the people, they have one opinion, and it's diametrically opposed to what the people want. And migration, I think, is just one of many examples.
We cannot sustain a huge number, that level of foreign people living within the borders of this country, many of which are living off social welfare because they're being attracted here because of the loose welfare laws and immigration laws of the state.
Look after the Irish.
Thank you very much.
Grün sind unser Hauptgegner.
Klima. Scheiß auf den Klima, Mann.
The Irish are living and sleeping in the streets. The council come and take their tents and burn their goods or dump them. And these people are on a housing list 20 and 30 years. But if you come in here off a plane with no passport, you're safe. It's just not right. So there. And to anyone listening to this, call me what the hell you like. Little do I care.
In Dublin, riots broke out after 3 young children and a woman was stabbed, allegedly by a man of Algerian origin.
In the heart of a quintessentially English village in the home counties, a building which used to describe itself as the perfect location for a wedding, but not anymore. This is a hotel, which is now being used to house dozens of asylum seekers, much to the consternation of locals.
I speak to a lot of locals in the village. They usually let their kids roam around the village at night, you know, when they play with the bikes. Now some of them are like thinking twice.
Violence and vitriol on the streets of the United Kingdom, targeting migrants and mosques in an ugly eruption of anti-immigrant sentiment. For more than a week, riots breaking out in city after city. Cars torched in northeast England. Fires raging in Belfast in Northern Ireland. This hotel, used to house asylum seekers, set ablaze. More than 400 arrests so far, including nearly 150 just this weekend. Police warning the number will rise.
Migration happened because of the climate change issues, right? And I'm linking migration also to, again, at the origin side, not at what happens when people actually move, to what we can collectively do between development actors, governments, to prevent people from migrating, building better homes, stronger, more resilient communities so that they don't need to run away whenever the next flood or drought come, right? So I wouldn't like to lose the thought of prevention, because we often talk about the consequence. And then the second point that I wanted to mention, and you said it as well, it's highly political, especially in European context, but also American context, to talk about migration, even though that's one of the core areas of our activities. This is where it's really heartbreaking to support people who move through these humanitarian service points. There is no funding for this, per se, for the humanitarian angle. So the only option for us is to pursue prevention at the origin, right? Or to work with, like the example in Turkey, with the government and private sector to create opportunities for those people when they land in a certain place.
It's 6:30 in the morning. Like every parent, Lainey Hawes is rushing to get her children ready for the day. But in the past few months, she's spent more and more of her time focused on schooling, fighting back against what she believes is growing conservative and Christian influence in the classroom.
When we first got here, everything was mild. School board meetings were boring. And then everything ramped up to this, and this is where we are now, and it's a fight. To me, it's anti-American to try and bring Christian ideology into our schools or into our government. Our country is based on allowing people to make that choice for themselves.
The rise of the new Christian right is called Christian nationalism by some. The belief that America was founded as a Christian nation and that the government should keep it that way, blurring the line between church and state. Donald Trump was seen as defending their cause when he entered the White House.
We're going to protect Christianity, and I can say that. I don't have to be politically correct or...
And it was the storming of the Capitol that showed just how much religious and political identities had begun to merge on the right.
Who did you vote for in 2020?
Joe Biden. I vote for Joe Biden.
And in 2024?
Donald Trump. Donald Trump, that year.
Why did you choose Trump this time?
This situation with immigration is out of control. These gangs that come from the border. I came from Jackson Heights. Back in 2017 and 2016, even 2018, it was really quiet neighborhood. Not so much after 2020. For me, it's number one, economy.
Let's be very clear. The key question is not China first, or United States first, or Europe first. The key question for all of us and for all the nations in the world is climate first. And if we want to have climate first, we need to invest more in the fight against climate change.
Critics say, though, you know what? He crosses the line sometimes.
He does cross that line, but at the same time, he's the only one that will cross that line. He's the only one that will say what's on people's minds, and it's working.
It's turning us into racist people, which I don't want to be racist, but it's making me dislike these people.
Police in Rome have intervened as angry clashes erupted between local residents and refugees living in a working-class neighborhood. Some locals had chased a group of North African refugees back to their temporary lodgings after they left to buy coffee. One angry resident accused refugees of robbery and violence. We have to face our own criminality, and now we have to face it from abroad, she said.
Basta.
That's it.
Basta.
Violence, robberies during the day. They beat up our people, getting on.
Black people who have been hurt continuously by the city and country it loves. It ain't our responsibility to take care of everybody else.
Many in Chicago's black community and the city council speaking out against spending $51 million to house migrants, asking when will the help for them finally become a reality.
When do citizens of the United States of America come first?
How about this? Give them all these politicians' addresses and put them in their backyards, in their basements, in their houses.
We do not take care of our own people.
You speak very much about the money. It's our money. Every dollar you give is our money.
David Seymour felt the full fury of Māoridom in Parliament this afternoon after introducing his Treaty Principles Bill.
This bill confirmed the government has the right to govern New Zealand and this Parliament has the right to make laws in the best interests of everyone. It commits to protecting the rights of everyone.
Drowned out by a vocal opposition.
It is not division. Treaties are supposed to unite people, not divide them.
Which only got louder.
Shame, shame on you, David Seymour.
This Parliament means nothing in Aotearoa without the tiriti o Waitangi. The only reason this Parliament exists in Aotearoa is because our tipuna consented to it.
Whether or not this bill becomes law in this term of Parliament, it's only a matter of time before its logic prevails. That's why they say kill the bill, because they can't kill the idea.
He is not standing up for democracy. He is using and abusing democracy against my people, against your people. How dare you, David Seymour?
ACT are seen to be pulling the strings and running the country, like the KKK with a swipe card to the beehive.
Some taking it too far.
This is to you, David Seymour. You fuel hatred and misinformation in this country. You bring out the worst in New Zealanders. You should be ashamed of yourself, and you are a liar.
As the House came to cast their votes...
Sit down. We're in the middle of a vote. The ayes have it. First, a party vote's been called for.
Mr. Speaker.
A party vote has been called for. There's a process here.
Pāti Māori, e ono ngā pōti e whakahe. Hawana, ka whakamanu whiriti a koe au, a kamate, kamate, kamate.
The House is suspended until the ringing of the bells. The gallery is to be cleared.
Italy has set a good example by signing the Italy-Albania Protocol to process asylum claims on Albanian territory.
But a court in Rome recently stopped the plan, ruling that the group of detained migrants should return to Italy while the European Court reviews the action's legality.
The judges have said this group of migrants from Egypt and Bangladesh who have been brought to the processing centres in Albania had to be brought back to Italy and couldn't be repatriated simply because the countries of origin were not considered safe.
President Sergio Mattarella told Elon Musk not to interfere after the billionaire commented on a ruling by Italian judges that curbed Italy's controversial deal with Albania over processing migrants, writing on X that this decision was unacceptable, adding that these judges need to go. Well, in what is an extremely unusual move for his role, the President Mattarella responded to that, saying that everyone must respect the country's sovereignty and cannot make it their business to give lessons.
Musk called the court's decision unacceptable, questioning if Italy's democracy is led by its people, or as he puts it, an unelected autocracy.
These serial elections in Argentina, where Mr. Milei was elected, and the election of Mr. Wilders, who is a rather notorious Islamophobic and far right-wing figure.
We're living through times where hate is on the agenda, anti-immigrant, anti-immigration, hatred is currency.
What role does misogyny play? Does still existing racism or bias play? And I think that's part of the problem that allows somebody like Donald Trump to get elected.
The far-right protests that we've been seeing over the course of the past week, where are these tensions coming from?
When you think of Angela Merkel's famous slogan in 2015, we can do it, that was when she accepted the 1 million refugees in Germany. 3 years after that influx of refugees, pickpocketing migrants do account for nearly 32% of those crimes. And that is obviously disproportionate because migrants don't represent anything like 32% of the German population.
President-elect Trump was propelled back into office by a red shift across America. Take a look at this map. It shows how dramatic that shift was. The red arrows facing right are counties that switched from voting for President Biden in 2020 to electing Trump this year. It was pretty much everywhere.
The German government has announced tougher security and asylum measures after 3 people were fatally stabbed last week. The main suspect was a young Syrian man facing deportation. The announcement comes ahead of elections on Sunday in 2 eastern German states, where the far-right Alternative for Germany is riding high in the polls.
Germany now wants tougher immigration measures. Chancellor Olaf Scholz announced it after a marathon meeting with German state leaders. They'll make it easier for Germany to deport migrants. And it's a far cry from Germany's old pro-refugee policies implemented by former Chancellor Angela Merkel. It's part of a larger trend we are seeing across Europe. On Monday, Italy proposed a migrant plan. Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is shipping them off to Albania. Migrants will wait in Albania while their asylum applications are being processed by Italy. So everywhere you look, Europeans are shutting the door, trying to outsource their refugee problem.
It's a party at a German resort, and listen to what they're chanting.
Deutschland den Deutschen!
Deutschland for Deutsche, Germany for the Germans. These young people are singing Nazi slogans. Ausländer raus means foreigners out.
Polls ahead of the EU election show that the far-right parties are surging across Europe.
Athens has received a massive influx of migrants and asylum seekers, mostly from Asia and Africa. And what's happened is you've seen an attendant rise in xenophobia and the catapulting to the national political stage of a party called Golden Dawn.
The European elites, of course they hate Trump, because they understand President Trump
is a populist nationalist. They understand about what he's talking about is trade. They understand what he's talking about tariffs. They understand he puts American citizens first, and he puts American citizens' economic benefit first.
But you have to understand, Donald Trump himself is a white supremacist, so he's only speaking what his people says, okay? And Donald Trump, as even a lot of people in Ethiopia told me, they see that he's only for white people only. He's not for everybody in America. I mean, it's not that very hard to see that. I mean, Donald Trump is a straight white supremacist.
Something unthinkable is happening. A nationalist, anti-immigrant, far-right party is on the rise here. Its leaders use Nazi slogans and sound like descendants of history's tyrants.
John Lewis is such an amazing character. He helped change the face of America.
Martin Luther King Jr. changed the face of America.
I intimately know candidates who will help change the face of America.
John F. Kennedy basically reached out to my generation and said, ask what you can do for your country. And I think a generation responded. We changed the face of America.
The Americans say that they don't want any immigrants to come because they will change the face of America. And a lot of people have said that that sentiment in and of itself is racist.
All of us out there really have to be involved. This midterm election could help change the face of America.
This is the most diverse generation racially and ethnically in our history. I think most of us recognize that. We are in the period of enormous change. The face of America is changing. By middle of the century, we will no longer be a majority white country.
The black genocide in the U.S. There's been a black genocide ever since we've been here. And let me tell you something. People on the continent know about the genocide that's happening to us right here. They know exactly what's happening to us. They articulate that very well when you have a conversation with them on the continent. Oh, yes, they know our problems. Yes, they know our issues. It is not a secret.
Let us avoid building walls and let us begin to rebuild our cities. We don't need more division. We need more diversity. Help us turn from the wicked ways of racism, of discrimination, of disenfranchisement, of abuse, of erasing the vulnerable and the downtrodden. And it is then and only then where God promises that he will hear our prayer, and then in turn, he will heal our land. How can we say that we love God who we have never seen and separate families at the border?
Our dreamers, they came by the thousands, by plane, train, automobile. I'm sure they were sleeping 10 deep on someone's living room floor. And they came because they believe in our democracy and the only country they have ever known as home. We are here because the American dream and our American democracy are under attack and on the line like never before. When we have children in cages crying for their mothers and fathers, don't you dare call that border security. That's a human rights abuse. And they are age-old forms of hate with new fuel.
Mr. Kennedy, a man who has recently claimed that COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and Black people, this is not the kind of free speech that I know of. The free speech that is protected by the Constitution's First Amendment. But free speech is not an absolute. The Supreme Court has stated that. And others' free speech that is allowed, hateful, abusive rhetoric, does not need to be promoted in the halls of the people's house. This Republican charge of free speech is being used by Republican members to promote quasi-science, things such as the replacement theory that says that brown people are replacing good white Americans here in this country. Let's not remember that this country first belonged to brown Native American people.
They're colonizers. That's what they are. If you speak out against the colonizers of this country, you out there by yourself.
We alone. We don't have protection. We don't have a mob to handle shit that's got to be handled for us. If something happens to my brother Tariq, it ain't no repercussions. The police do what they want to do. And ain't nobody out here doing nothing about it but marching. It ain't no motherfucker that's finna mob on the police, get the officer that do dirt to the black people that get done wrong, kill him and his family. That's how I feel. And I ain't scared to say that. It's an eye for an eye. You got to motherfucking not only chop off the motherfucking head of the dragon, you got to chop off the head of the leadership.
I mean, we've talked about everything but race tonight. We've talked about income. We've talked about class. We've talked about region. We haven't talked about race. This was a white lash. This was a white lash against a changing country. It was a white lash against a black president in part. And that's the part where the pain comes. And Donald Trump has a responsibility tonight to come out and reassure people that he is going to be the president of all the people who he insulted and offended and brushed aside. Yeah, when you say, you want to take your country back, you got a lot of people who feel that we're not represented well either.
For those of you who are not aware, I'm not a politician. I'm a liberal libertarian economist who was honoured to become the President of the Republic of Argentina following the resounding failure of more than a century of collectivist policies that destroyed our country. I haven't come here to tell the world what it should be doing. I've come here to tell the world, on the one hand, what will happen if the United Nations continues to promote collectivist policies that it's been promoting under the mantle of the 2030 Agenda, and on the other hand, the values of the new Argentina. The model of the United Nations that had been successful, the origin of which we can see in the ideas of President Wilson, who talked about the need for peace without victory, and that was founded out of cooperation from nation states, has been abandoned. It's been replaced by a model of supranational government, of international bureaucrats that attempt to impose on citizens of the world a specific way of living.
Adesso chiaramente riparlano di togliere la dicitura padre e madre dai documenti, perché la famiglia è un nemico, l'identità nazionale è un nemico, l'identità di genere è un nemico, tutto quello che ci definisce per loro è un nemico. È il gioco del pensiero unico. Ci devono togliere tutto quello che siamo, perché quando non avremo più un'identità e non avremo più radici, noi saremo privi di consapevolezza, incapaci di difendere i nostri diritti. È il loro gioco. Vogliono che siamo genitore 1, genitore 2, genere LGBT, cittadini X, dei codici. Ma noi non siamo dei codici, noi siamo persone e difenderemo la nostra identità. Io sono Giorgia, sono una donna, sono una madre, sono italiana, sono cristiana. Non me lo toglierete. Non me lo toglierete.
We're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly. We're going to fix our borders. We're going to fix everything about our country. And we made history for a reason tonight, and the reason is going to be just that.
Immigrants have traditionally done a lot of that work, and then their children have come in, and the Trump administration are sort of rewriting some of that history and saying only if you can stand on your own 2 feet from the minute you get here should you be allowed in. And I think that's something that we have to continually call out and make sure that we are reporting the way that the history of America has been, and not just the way the Trump administration is.
Where is Elizabeth? The New York Times reported this week that this will almost certainly disadvantage poor people from Latin America, Africa, and parts of Asia, and immigrants from Canada and Europe are least likely to face problems.
Well, this is about people of color. And we know what the president said about not wanting certain people from those kind of countries in. It's very distressing. This is not the history of our country. These are not the values of the United States.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Cutting Through the Culture. I am one of your hosts tonight, Miss Keisha King Benton. I am not feeling so well tonight. I will be honest with you, but that was a really great montage as usual. Mr. Chad Jackson always comes through. So just a few notes. Do you notice how people always want to blame someone else for their problems? So like we heard this a lot from Black people in particular, but there is just this notion that, oh, see how they used to do, this is what they did in America, this is what, this is why I'm, I can't get ahead. No, they never ever want to take ownership of their problems. You cannot live your life that way. Like, you just can't. It's always somebody else. Like, it's just, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. There's a reason why that caught my eye. I saw something. I'll talk about it later. And the other thing I want to say, forcing change. So what I see a lot of what's happening in Europe, what is happening across America, these people want to force change upon other Americans because based on their own ideology, based on what they think that they know. And you can't ever force change on people like that. You just can't. People are going to push back when they feel put upon. You just can't do. God doesn't even force himself on you. He gives you will to choose. And I think we're going to see a lot of people push back from all walks of life, from all different races and ethnicities and backgrounds, because no one wants to just have something forced on them. Now, if you present the argument to me and then we can discuss it and let me make my own decision, do I really want these people in my country? Okay, then we can have a conversation about that. But to think that you're just going to open the gates, let these people in because you think they should be here and you want to misquote the Bible. I'm thinking about that man at that Kamala Harris rally where he's quoting scripture incorrectly, trying to say that it's that this is how God will heal our land. We just need to let the blacks or the browns, basically let the browns into the country, and that's somehow going to heal our land. And that's justice. No, that's not justice. But I have more thoughts on this, but I will want to see what my friend Mr. Chuck Littleton has to say about this. And Chad. Hi, Chad. Well, you know what? Let's just bring up everybody then. Hello. Chuck, what do you have? What do you think about the montage?
Oh man, a lot of things running through my mind. Well, in honor of the man on my shirt here, as he once famously said, if you don't know the language, get the fuck out of the country, eh? See, that's the man that they ran out of entertainment, you see, because he was so offensive. One of my personally, or one of my favorite Jews, Yeah, sorry, you got to say that because, we all know you can't say anything about Jews because we know that they rule the world, right? That's sarcasm for those of you out there in the Rio Linda. But yeah, it's funny, who the villains are and who the good guys are, right? I mean, whereas a man like Andrew Silverstein or Andrew Dice Clay, as he's known he's more, of course, recognized for his entertainment name. Where is he or men like him or people in entertainment, for example, when you need them? Where are the George Carlins of the world when you need them, right? Anyway, I digress. Chad, I told you, last week, you put Kamala Harris in the montage. I said I'd never want to see or hear that woman again. Of course, I know she's not dead, so of course I would hear her again at some point, but I didn't expect to hear her shrill tone so soon. But no, there's a lot of things are going through my mind, all the stuff about the far right and climate change. You see out there in New Zealand in their parliament, I guess the Maori people, have a stake in the government out there down under over there in New Zealand. And I like the I like that little dance. That comment, I don't know what they doing, I don't know what they saying. It's a cool looking dance. It gets you hype. But see, a lot of people don't even know, of course, the white man is the savage and the barbarian and the colonizer. If anyone knew anything about Made culture, you wouldn't be so apt to just attack the white man for his barbarism if you knew anything about the culture of the Made, how savage and barbarous they were before the white man came and civilized them. They were cannibals and all sorts of other things. But anyway, it's funny to me too, just looking at this. It's like, okay, well, we have to transplant you, move you, take you here and move you there. But the understand the human capital develops in a vacuum, right? And certain understandings about the world, they happen as a result of a confluence or a kind of a merging of separate circumstances that bring about an opportunity for a new revelation. In so many words, there are only certain kinds of people who are going to understand the things that we as Americans should understand. Or let's just say, for example, the Americans that preceded us, they seem to understand these things better than we understand them today. I didn't see all of Blanchard's live, but he did a live the other day when he said freedom is white. And I understand what he means by that, right? Because there are certain circumstances that have to occur, right? And you see there with Giorgio Maloney speaking to the Italian people, right? Rome, Greece, the seat of Western civilization, right? For a time, Western, Northern Europe was in the darkness, was backwards, cave people, whatever you want to call them, right? Conquered by the Romans. And then when the Romans fell, those of Western Europe, France, England, during the Renaissance, they rediscovered the classics. They rediscovered the great works of Aristotle and Plato. And all of a sudden, Western Europe became just, the example for the world. England became the example of the world when England was once upon a time a backwater. But it was these certain circumstances that occurred that allowed England to become what it became. There's a process involved, and you can't just jump the line, right? If you want to be like America, you have to learn how to be like America where you live. You can't do that here because you don't understand what it took for us to get here. You don't know what this means. You don't understand this. You just don't. But, we all know the ideology that they're pushing and why they're doing things the way that they're doing them. Shining city on the hill, right? Let the United States be an example. We didn't want to be an empire like our English forefathers and foremothers. Be the example. But you got to figure that out where you live. But you can't do that here, bro. You can't do that here. So if you don't know the language, get the F out the country.
But it does seem like that's what people want to do. They want the American way and things, and they like it. They admire it, but they want to come here and do the old thing. Chad, why don't they, how come they can't put two and two together? It's just like how people, they leave a state, they leave like California, and then they move to Texas, Florida, Tennessee, or somewhere like that. And they don't understand that the reason why they got the stuff in California was because of the actions and stuff that they were taking by, for what they were voting for. Then how come they're not making that connection when they come?
Yeah, that's actually a very fascinating question. And excuse me, those of you who had to suffer through the montage. I kind of just whipped it together today, and if it felt like there was no rhyme or reason to it, that's because I'm not sure why I'm getting feedback. Bear with me one quick second.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. It's because I was trying to basically categorize the various clips. So it opens up with the social engineers and the society planners, as it were, talking about the need for migration and the need for something called what's it called?
refugee justice or something of this nature, right? Where the idea is that the G7, the so-called rich countries, have to take in a certain quota of refugees that have been displaced and migrants who are in search for a better life. And they're really trying to impress upon the Western nations this need to basically lift other nations up, as it were. So that was the first part of the montage. And then I wanted to move into how people on the ground are actually responding to and are affected by this influx of migrations and refugees into their own nations. And then from there, I wanted to kind of merge into some of the pushback that these same intellectuals and these same society organizers are saying, well, no, stop being a bigot, stop being xenophobic, stop being racist. This is a good thing, right? Just trying to basically slap the people back into submission. And then I wanted to, in a sense, showcase the rise of such figures as Donald Trump, like the president of Argentina, like the prime minister of Italy, and, you know, the growing parties in Germany, so on and so forth, which the media is calling extreme right-wing politics, or this kind of backlash against a changing society and a changing world. And so they're kind of assuming this posture of having the moral high ground. And to Quisha's point, which, you know, you made in your opening remarks, the fact is, well, I forgot the point that I was actually going to make, but the fact is, okay, I have it back now. So the fact is, you can't do this degree of social planning without this kind of backlash, without this kind of pushback. Like people aren't just going to lay down and take it. And I feel that to the extent that you see the WEF and you see the World Bank and you see the United Nations and all these other entities that, you know, domestically speaking, the Democrat Party, to the extent that you see all these entities and organizations and these bodies pushing this stuff, it could be argued that they are, in a sense, jumping the gun, or they're pulling the trigger before the, you know, they're picking the fruit before the garden is fully harvested. Because they have been laying the groundwork for well over the last 100 years to, in a sense, build a new man, a new liberal man, a new kind of postmodern man. And perhaps they gauged it wrong. Perhaps they were erroneous in how they kind of checked the pulse of society to see whether or not mankind is ready to make this next step toward globalism. Because the reality of it is, to the extent that you do see the popularization of this kind of pushback, I don't think that they were ready for that. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I don't know. But I think it's notable, and I know Blanchard's made this point a number of times, that you know, for all of you who are afraid and all of you who are scared, if they wanted you, they'll get you, right? If they have all this power, if they have all this control, if they wanted you, they'll get you. It reminds me of well, Blanche has made that point too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've heard Blanche made that point too. And to be fair to you, Chuck, you've made that point as well. But it reminds me of when I was a kid, right? Whenever we would go on vacation to visit family in Oklahoma, my dad would give my brothers and I a bald fade. And I had this particular cousin who, without fail, when he'd walk behind you, he'd pop us on the back of the head. And it got to the point where if I knew you were coming by, I would duck and dodge, you know, so as to evade having getting hit in the head. And he would say, if I wanted you, I'd get you, right? So the point that I'm trying to make is, like, and Chuck and I, we actually made this point in our last documentary that we did, where because we no longer live in the days of the monarchy, we now live in the age of so-called democracy. The idea is to convince the people of given nations that the direction that the elitists wish to take us is the best course of action for mankind. And I think that a lot of these powers that be kind of learned their lesson over the course of the 20th century, where they tried to do so by force. You had people like Vladimir Lenin and Stalin who used terror as a means of power and rule. And you had Hitler doing the same thing. You had Mao doing the same thing, forced starvation, so on and so forth. You had Fidel Castro in Cuba. And they were trying to rule by force. And of course, that doesn't bode well in a society where you have cameras and you have magazines and newspapers and ways in which to paint you in a bad light. And sure enough, because people are so dumb and people are so gullible, they still see people like Mao and Castro and Lenin and others as good people, as good guys, right? These young leftists that are coming up. But on the other part, you have a lot of young folks who are not leftists and who do who are not falling for a lot of the kind of soft moves toward a globalist society that these people are trying to implement. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of change up their tactics over the course of the next 50 years, whether they will resort to force or whether they will try to think up new kind of manipulative ways to move society in the way they wish them to go. Because to Quisha's point, the fact that you do see a right-wing contingent rising up is something that I don't think they accounted for, if all that makes sense.
Very much so. I've been thinking, and I want to know, Blanche, do you, with this pushback that you see from Americans in particular, I am starting to wonder, I don't know if I quite believe it yet, but I'm at least starting to wonder if there is something kind of built into the American psyche. There's something, even if we haven't been taught it explicitly, I feel like there is still something in the American way, in the American spirit, I guess I'll say, that is like you said, what now? What you finna do? Like, just like this, there's something about Americans that, and we're seeing it in other places too. But I don't know. I feel like America is a little bit different than these other Western nations where we have just this kind of I don't even know what it is, but just we're not here for we don't want this stuff, like cut the crap. I don't know, that kind of January 6th kind of energy. I don't know. What do you think?
I think there was a time in American history where Americanism, you call it, was popular. It was popular to be pro-American, popular to be a proud American. They made films about it, shows, everything. It was like, American flag waving, just even the slogan, proud to be an American, even cartoons like G.I. Joe. I mean, all of these things were very pro-American. And I guess America was seen as the beacons of hope for the world because Americans actually believed in freedom. Now, that attitude you're talking about, that spirit, that is a patriotic, God-fearing, that's from white people though. That's from conservative, God-fearing white people for the most part. That's what made that popular. Now, some people adopt that same attitude and spirit towards the country, but if you think about it, after that period ended, there's now we're in a period of America's bad. So now, if you even say that you love America and America's a great country, we know Make America Great Again, anything that's pro-American now is seen as racist and it's seen as bad. So the people that love America, you just embolden that spirit even more because in all honesty, they're under attack. What they're doing with this migration thing is really, it's war because it's a culture war. And so they don't have a solution to stop the migration. Now they blaming climate. Think about it, they blaming climate change. They blaming climate change. They blaming the uprising in their own countries. So there's no solution to the immigration problem. The solution is for white people to say, okay, come take over. That's really what it boils down to. And so that American spirit that you're talking about, that's what's hated now. Now, granted, people are saying, I'm proud of being American and proud of my country, but in 2024, what is the history of America? They're going to say it's slavery. They reduce America's history to slavery, and that's it. So now, if a person is pro-country, if a person is America first, if a person is anything, they're demonized. The lady that was in the Italian lady that spoke, she listed all some things that they and she sees it though, because what they're saying is that, think about it, what's happened to Paris over the past 30 years? Paris used to be called the city of love. People used to go there and get married. It was romantic. Now look at Paris. So look at Ireland. You talked about the Irish, the 1/3 of the names now are Muslim names. Church being born in Ireland. So again, what they're trying to do is they're trying to erase white culture. If I go to Ireland or Wales or England or whatever, I don't want to go there and see a bunch of bliggities running around. I don't. If I go to India, if I go to these places, I want to see the people. What's this whole push to make this world one? And again, it's one global citizen, which will lead it to the one world government, all this stuff. But I'm saying, but look what they're doing though. Who is going to fight against this? It's going to be white people. This burden of immigration rests solely on the shoulders of white people, because people aren't mass migrating into Africa. They're not mass migrating into any of these other countries. They're mass migrating into places where the quote unquote racist white people are. So the burden is on them.
And real quick, Quisha, just to answer your question, because I don't think I actually answered it. Are you familiar with Daniel Besner? Okay. So he would answer the question that you put to me by saying that, well, actually, America has to take in these refugees. America has to take in these migrants because their policies have so devastated these developing countries that, you know, if you go in and you ravish these communities, you ravish their minerals, you basically exploit and extract everything they have, and you make it impossible for these other countries to kind of put their own legs under them, their own feet under them, so to speak, to really come into their own. And you have all this, you know, land flowing with milk and honey. You owe it to them to accept their migrants and to become truly a melting pot. So that's what he would say. In fact, he actually went on Lynn Lowry's podcast a few days ago, making this very argument.
Wow.
Can I respond to that?
Oh, please. Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm glad Chad brought that up. Because it's BS, it's nonsense.
Hey, real quick before you go on, Chuck, Quisha, your microphone is getting a lot of feedback. So when you're done speaking, if you can just mute and then remember to unmute yourself whenever you come back on.
Yeah, sound like something running in the background, some air or something. But anyway, Chad. I mean, that's all nonsense. It's not about, you know, natural resources. Of course, it's about the human capital and subsequent actions from that point that actually can, of course, you know, transform these natural resources into things of value that people can actually put to market and generate a profit from it. When you look at some of the wealthier places or wealthier countries in the past, say in the Western Hemisphere, say for example like Venezuela or Argentina, even you saw the current president of Argentina in the montage. I'm forgetting the name, and I feel so stupid because I'm forgetting it at this moment. The president that rose to power in Argentina some time ago, that virtually ruined that country. A lot of people some people may not know that Argentina once upon a time was one of the, I think it was in the top 5, one of the top 5 wealthiest countries in the world. When you look now, say for example, with a country like Japan and South Korea that don't have the material or you know are rich in minerals and natural resources like some other African and other Latin American countries, but yet still these are some of the largest economies in the world. These are some of the largest economies in the world because of their for lack of a better term, for their liberal and their more open values and you know these kinds of things, you know, the embrace of free market capitalism and individualism and these things. It's their political systems and their economic systems that allow a country like Japan to generate a wealth. It's interesting too. We all know about Japan and how it was just so, you know, behind the rest of the world for centuries due to its you know unwillingness to sort of allow people in and to allow for a cultural transmission and diffusion in these things. But it's funny that, you know, after the World War II and the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that, you know, Japan became one of the United States' closest allies and has become the prosperous nation economically that it has become. Not to say that it doesn't have issues in other places, but anywhere in the world, to Chad's, well, it wasn't Chad's point. He was referencing another gentleman. I forget his name, but yeah, it has nothing to do with America's policies. It's about its own internal deficiencies and malfeasance and corruption. And, places, for example, the entire region of sub-Saharan Africa is one big giant kleptocracy. And that's why you do not have private investment in these countries, because once again, an American value like private property rights and the right to pursue happiness, these values and precepts are not respected in these countries. So you don't have private investment in these countries because people don't believe that their property rights will be respected, because you have these leaders, for the sake of their own political careers, imbue this belief in their own people that their current conditions are the result of the legacy of colonialism and exploitation. And anyone who has the resources and means to do so in the private sector do not invest in these countries, because oftentimes we've seen this in Uganda, we've seen this in Zimbabwe under Robert Mugabe. These peoples who are non-native, non-indigenous, have their properties and their holdings confiscated by government officials. And they just steal. They just steal everything. But Blanchard, I mean, we're in a war. We're in a war. There's a modern axis of evil between China, Russia, and Iran, and many others. We are currently in a war as we speak. And I just want to mention, to go back to the montage, the one thing that lady said when she talked about how, what kind of country, these Christian values are in our government, or whatever she was saying. But what she doesn't understand is the separation of church and state, which of course is not in the Constitution, but as a precept here in the United States, this notion of separation between church and state wouldn't be possible without the Protestant ethic in the first place, because one gave birth to the other. But anyway, I don't mean to get into the weeds when it comes to that. This is the reason why you don't see the kind of liberalizing effect take hold in these Islamic countries, because of their religious tradition does not give rise to the kind of secular government that we see across the West, for better or for worse. You can't have one without the other. But unfortunately, it goes back to what Marxists, or what Marx taught, or what he said, this whole idea that within a thing are the seeds of his own destruction. For example, the man who actually coined the term critical theory was a member of the Frankfurt School known as Max Horkheimer was his name. And he penned an essay that was published sometime in the 1930s called Traditional versus Critical Philosophy. And in his work, he said of liberalism that this notion within the liberal idea that was like anti-mythology, that a supposition, or that belief that belief in and of itself became mythology. So this anti-mythology became mythology. And then here we have this problem here today. And then last thing, Quisha, my last point. You talked about just morale and the belief, and is there something within Americans that just kind of make us like, we buck whenever we feel threatened? When Ronald Reagan gave this speech in 1983 at the Association of Evangelicals, when he referred to the Soviet Union as the evil empire, and the entire left-wing media went to a hissy fit and said, how dare Ronald Reagan say that about the Soviet Union, another nuclear superpower? And if it's because of rhetoric like that, that's going to lead to a nuclear holocaust. We found out later from prisoners in Poland, once everything hit the fan, the Soviet Union dissolved and everything else, prisoners from Poland had visited the United States and said that it was that comment from Ronald Reagan that gave them hope and gave them that they can go on, and that one day they could finally be free, because they looked to the United States as an example. Because once the United States, it's not so much you gotta send troops here and then liberate. It's just that the belief that the United States being the standard bearer of these ideas and these principles, when the United States no longer believes, and when it lacks confidence, the morals of people who are actually oppressed in other parts of the world, their morale goes down. because they said if we don't have the United States to look up to, then what hope do we have? So when you get up there, and this is part when people say that Ronald Reagan defeated the Soviet Union with economics, but he also defeated the Soviet Union with his rhetoric, because he restored, by and large, this idea that America was something special and that America was something to look up to. If you got these folks sitting up here talking about America is racist, it's oppressive, it's this, it's that, it's blah, blah, blah. The peoples who are actually oppressed, living under communism, living under Islamic radicalism and so on and so forth, they give up. They give up hope. And then eventually that kind of tyranny is going to come to us all.
Well, I mean, the Bible says hope deferred makes the heart sick. So, you know, when hope is, you can't see it, you will definitely be depressed and things like that. And America has definitely been a beacon of hope for the rest of the world. So I can,
because if you got to think about it, Quisha, if you're locked in, you know, of course, you know, Poland was a communist country at the time, I believe under Nicolae Ceausescu. No, it was Romania under Nicolae Ceausescu. When you're sitting there and the people who are oppressing you directly, if you feel like you don't have an ally in the world, and the only country that could possibly stand up to your direct oppressor is giving them a pass, it just takes the wind completely out of your sails. These prisoners in the Eastern Bloc said it was Ronald Reagan's rhetoric that gave them the strength to go on when they were locked in those prisons, locked in those jails as political prisoners. His rhetoric made them feel as though they could muster up the strength to survive another day. Halfway on the other side of the world.
There was a point in not Obama, Lord, Trump and Biden's debate, the debate that exposed everything. There was a moment in there where Trump looked over at Joe Biden and he said, "Joe, they're ruining our country." It was like an appeal to his his Americanism. Like, you're an American. Like, how are you? Huh?
I said it's an appeal to his humanity. It's his humanity. Like, is there a human? Is there a soul in there somewhere?
I don't know about you.
Yeah,
Quisha,
it definitely was.
I don't know about you, Quisha, but like, especially over the course of the last year, notwithstanding Joe Biden's trying to villainize those of us who refuse to get the vaccine, notwithstanding the fact that he literally attempted to railroad Clarence Thomas and his confirmation in the early 90s, notwithstanding his corruption as it relates to his son in Ukraine, notwithstanding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I genuinely feel bad for Joe Biden. Like, I genuinely feel sorry for him. You know, I can't explain it, but like, I don't want to see this man be made a fool of, be made a mockery of. There's just something in me that just feels genuinely bad for him.
Yeah,
I don't know. I can't explain it.
I float. I'm gonna be like Trump. I weave with that emotion. You know how Trump, he's like, yeah, I like to weave my conversations.
Yeah,
I weave with that feeling for Joe Biden, because sometimes I'm like, looking at the things that he was doing when he was fully coherent, I'm like, okay, that was pretty wicked. And then, you know, looking at him now, but I do have those same sentiments sometimes when I see him, because I don't think that Joe Biden was ever really that bright. And I feel like he was almost just like kind of pulled into something, like, oh, they saw this bumbling kind of idiot walking around and they just, the evil ones, you know, the ones who knew how to, you know, that were corrupt. You know, like, okay, this is somebody we can take advantage of. Not to say that he didn't. He is fully responsible and will be held accountable for, you know.
He's a puppet. He's a puppet. He bit off more than he could chew. Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, I don't know. It's just,
does my mic sound better?
Yeah. If it sounds better than it did last week, but there is some feedback that we're getting here and there.
Oh, still okay.
So real quick, Quisha, before you move on,
I wanted to play this one.
Yeah, I wanted to say something before you move. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah. So I'll go and then Blanche go and then Quisha, you can take it. But whenever so there is I don't know if you all caught it, but in the montage, I reserved a run in the montage of about 4 minutes specifically for Black folks, because Black folks are a very interesting and pathetic case study when it comes to this Great Reset and when it comes to national identity and the disdain for immigrants and so on and so forth. They're a very interesting case study. But when you look at people like, for example, Bakari Sellers, I don't know if you all are familiar with Bakari Sellers. I know for a moment there he was a contributor to CNN. But it's funny because Trump did receive a large portion of support from Black male voters in certain counties. I think North Carolina, Black men showed up and showed out for Donald Trump in that specific county. Overall, the so-called Black vote didn't make much of a move, but in certain counties it did. But Bakari Sellers is trying to reappeal to this notion that Republicans and Donald Trump aren't for Black people. And he tried to do so with this specific tweet. I don't know if you all saw it, but here he is. Blacks for Trump. Don't worry. We just want y'all to know you're not qualified. And of course, he shows a screenshot of Donald Trump's developing cabinet. And he's getting at the fact that there's not a Black person on this cabinet that's developing so far. But I don't think that these self-perceived elitists, and I say self-perceived because they're not really elite. They're not elite in my book, but they perceive themselves to be elitists. They perceive themselves to be smarter than the rest of us. And so these types, this ilk, this intelligentsia type, they haven't quite learned their lesson that when it comes to this kind of identity politics of race and using race to manipulate the electorate to do what you want them to do, a lot of people are starting to get over that. That's not as effective as it was in the early 2000s. It certainly isn't as effective as it was when Barack Obama was running for president. That's for damn sure. But I don't think there's an increasing number of people who are voters who don't care about such pejoratives as racist and sexist and homophobic and this, that, and the third. I know for myself, what I care most about is who's the most competent, who is the most qualified. I frankly don't care that there isn't a single Black person on his cabinet so far. But the fact that Bakari Sellers and others are trying to use these same tools to try to either guilt Black folks or try to shame Black folks into supporting Democrats or supporting leftist ideology, because look, he doesn't have a single Black person on this cabinet so far. I don't know. What do you all think of this?
I mean, I think that Bakari Sellers, again, Black folks struggle with context. The majority of Black folks that are in politics are on the left. So just ideologically, why would Trump have Black people on his cabinet when 95+% of them are Democrats and liberals and progressives? So the pool for Black people for his cabinet are going to be small anyway, just based on what side of the aisle he's on. He's on the right, so it just is what it is. So I think it's a non-contextual thing to say there's nobody white on there when Sellers knows good and well that all these bigoties are Marxist, socialist, progressive. They all on the left side. So who? I know you want Trump to pick somebody Black to ruin everything. No, we want the ship to have a chance to leave the dock. So I don't mind his picks, and this notion that adding a person of color. Think about what they're saying. What are people really saying? To add a person of color for what? What are you actually saying? Are you saying it for aesthetics? Are you saying it to make it better? Like, what are you actually saying? What you're just saying is socialism. put somebody black in there because you need somebody black in there because black folks are oppressed and underrepresented, supposedly. When I walk outside, I see black folks on every billboard, bus stop, seat, train. I see black folks everywhere, but apparently they're unrepresented. But I just think they're sellers again. It's just a low-hanging fruit. It's just a fruit on the ground, actually. Just there's no black folks in this cabinet. I say good. But hold on, before I lose my train of thought, though, I want to piggyback on what Chuck said about people looking to the West. You know, during the Peter pandemic, you know, you watch some videos from other countries where people were protesting behind all this stuff, these mandates and all this stuff, and they literally had American flags, they had billboards, they had Trump, they had like all these people, like they like signs saying America, remember us. Like people around the world look to America for hope. And it's just crazy that the idea of America outside of the country is different from what the media portrays America inside the country. It's crazy. But when Chuck said, I remembered that all the people from around the world were literally saying, America, remember us. And this was in the midst of all the racial, Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, police brutality, all that. They was doing that in the midst of all of that as well. And so, Chad, you mentioned black people as it pertains to the Great Reset. Black people are not going to get involved with anything that doesn't deal with their race. So the World Economic Forum can get on TV and say all of the most horrific things, and black folks going not, if they don't mention black or police or reparations, black folks going to skip right over. They can mention computer chips in the brain and digital pass. Black folks ain't gonna care about none of that. Matter of fact, we was talking to a guy at the gym the other day, and my friend said, he said, you got troops falling from the sky, and you got white guys in the truck saying, get in so we can go to safety. He said, you know, you got the troops parachute out the sky, they got guns, they're coming down. He said, what are you gonna do? He said, he said, I'm gonna stay there. I ain't getting in the truck. Then I said, you gonna die. I said, you gonna die. Like I said, you don't understand. And then he asked me, he said, okay, what's the most important agenda? He said, globalization or police brutality. What do you think he said?
Police brutality. He didn't care.
You don't care about no globalization. You care about none of that.
And I know what it means. Then you know what it entails. Yeah, man. It's crazy, man. And that's another thing I wanted to mention. I couldn't think of it off the top of my head, so I had to take a moment to try and pull it up. It was so amazing when I brought up Japan. This is what I'm making reference to. During the Magi Restoration, a lot of people know about the Magi Restoration. A lot of people have talked about it. But what the Japanese people encountered, you know, when they finally opened themselves up to Western culture, they were so amazed by it. And it's funny because for all of this racism talk and all of this stuff, right, these were the ideas of Western intellectuals in the late 19th century. Well, you had eugenicists all over the world. You had a famous eugenicist in Japan by the name of, his name was Yoshio Takahashi. And he penned a book that was released in 1884 titled An Improvement on the Japanese Race, because they actually believed that the white man was in fact special, and that the way that the Japanese people could improve themselves was, he had this theory that black men should begin marrying white women, and of course thus giving birth to biracial children. And this is how they could improve Japan, was to pretty much, I guess, you know, dilute the Japanese gene pool by making it whiter, because they thought white people were unique or special. But, you know, it's just an interesting little side story there. But, you know, whites really were the first. And it's funny because a lot of the people to whom we demonize, you know, all these old racist, you know, white men like, you know, Adam Smith, or even Alexis de Tocqueville, Cecil Rhodes, you know, these your bliggity black types. Oh man, you talk about low-hanging fruit. They beat up on those guys all day, don't know a thing about them, never read their work, never heard the, you know, read their you know, their words or things that they had to say. You know, Miss Cecil Rhodes said explicitly that the African is just as much, my brother as the white man, insofar as he can learn how to adopt our ways. And he is, in fact, more than capable of adopting our ways. And so the issue for whites, even going back centuries, right, has always been cultural. And the people, the natives on the ground in these areas, in these colonial outposts, they wanted this new way of living. They wanted this new way of being. But you had a lot of deeply entrenched culture and tradition and ways to go about doing things that don't perhaps only benefited a certain segment or group of people who, fought against it and made things extremely hard for these settlers, for these colonists and what have you. So it's a very long and nuanced story, but these people make it out to be this whole where you have victims and then you have perpetrators. And so now all of a sudden America and Italy and Great Britain, we all, we owe the world something. We owe the world something, right? Never mind the fact that, of course, you had, Moorish occupation around the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, so on and so forth. The Ottoman Empire ruled, the Caliphate ruled for I don't know how many centuries, from about the 7th, 8th. I mean, it just until the end of World War I. But no big deal, I guess, because they weren't white and they weren't Christian, so no big deal.
Let's see. I want to play this for you all and get your reaction.
Immigrants have traditionally done a lot of that work, and then their children have come in, and the Trump administration are sort of rewriting some of that history and saying, only if you can stand on your own 2 feet from the minute you get here, should you be allowed in. And I think that's something that we have to continually call out and make sure that we are reporting the way that the history of America has been, and not just the way the Trump administration is.
Where is...
So it's funny because I don't think that this man really knows the history of America himself, because that's what you used to have to do. There was no benefits that you got when you came here back in the day. So the history of America is actually, you come here, you get nothing from, you have to come here to prove yourself. You have to come here to earn your way. That's why a lot of immigrants would go back, because some of them just could not make it. They would have to go back to their home countries because they couldn't make it. There was no welfare state, for them to benefit from. So this history that he thinks he is, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but he doesn't look American. At least he doesn't look like his family has been here for quite some time.
Yeah. He has African features.
Very strong African features.
That or West Indian.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Haitian, but yeah, Quisha, I think you actually hit it on the nose. I mean, but what he's referring to is manifest destiny. What he is referring to is, this trope that we are a nation of immigrants, which Chuck nipped that in the bud last week when he said, no, we're not a nation of immigrants, we're a nation of citizens. Because the fact is, to the extent that you had individuals who were coming over here, they were doing so with the posture of assimilating. They wanted to become American. They wanted to become quintessentially American. And I think it's very fascinating because, what you'll see time and again is leftists saying, we let all these white European immigrants come over here, but y'all want to close the door when it comes to brown and black immigrants. Well, again, it's a difference of assimilating versus wanting to, in a sense, weaponize diversity, which is, after all, the topic of the discussion tonight. Diversity as a weapon. DEI is literally a weapon to corporations here in the United States and around the world. This notion that, we are supposed to indigenize corporations. We're supposed to indigenize American industries and Western industries. We're supposed to indigenize these institutions, because the fact is, as they tell it, for far too long, America and the Western world has been leading with whiteness, and they have been prioritizing white or Eurocentric norms and customs and so on and so forth. And they've been doing so at the expense of Black and brown people. And the fact is, the reason why Black and brown people haven't been able to keep up is because their cultures, their desires, their aspirations are disregarded. And so we have to indigenize these institutions if we're going to build a more inclusive society. That is, after all, what the goal of the World Economic Forum is. I mean, these are people who genuinely wish to take control over the globe. This is what they want. And as such, they want to basically get rid of cultures. They want to get rid of this kind of cultural identity, this national identity, and build society around their ideas, their norms, their ideology, which is actually quite interesting to me because, you know, there was that lady in the montage who said, you know, so she moved to Texas. She moved to Tarrant County, which is a red county. It went to Joe Biden by a hair in the 2020 election, but Trump was able to regain it in this past election. But it's the only urban metropolitan county in the country that's red. Tarrant County. It's here in Texas. It's Fort Worth, Arlington, Mansfield, where I grew up, Rowlett, so on and so forth. Jericho Green, those of y'all who are familiar with his content, is actually moving from California to Tarrant County. And we welcome him with open arms. Hopefully I can do some content with him here locally. But, you know, so this lady moved from California to Tarrant County. And she said, you know, when I first moved to Tarrant County, the school board meetings were kind of dry. They were kind of boring. But then, you know, mothers for liberty and all these right-wing organizations, they began trying to impose their Christian ideology on the schools. And this isn't the American way, she said. Right. So she's trying to fight against what she sees as a rising sentiment of right-wing and Christian ideology. And she says that's not the American way. But I'm sure she has nothing at all to say about Agenda 2030. I'm sure she has nothing at all to say about the fact that the World Economic Forum, together with all of its social engineers, are literally trying to basically assume this position of leadership over society, to globalize society, to point it in the direction that they want it to go, right? So she has no problem at all punting all that responsibility to the World Economic Forum. But when it comes to Christians, now she has something to say. So it's not a matter of, like, there's no such thing as neutrality. There's no such thing as a center, right? The fact of the matter is we're all biased. Anyone who's in leadership is biased. And it's a struggle for power is what it actually is. And the question is, whose values, whose customs, whose standards will rule? Will it be the World Economic Forum? Will it be Christian ideology? Will it be a secular notion of society and civilization? What will it be? That's the question. And that's, I think, after all, I think that's at the end of the day what the battle and what the conversation is really about. And I feel like it's going to be cyclical. It's going to go round and round in circles, because what people are trying to tap into is this kind of one size fits all, or how can everybody be mutually benefited from the kind of government that we have. And you will never get to the bottom of that. You'll never arrive at an answer, because we all are biased in our inclinations. And so what the founding fathers were able to do when it comes to the formation of the United States, and saying, look, we are a nation of states, a nation of sovereign states who have their own identity, who have their own customs, who have their own culture. What the founding fathers were able to do is the best thing on this side of heaven. But what we don't talk about often or at all, and maybe we can get to this later in the show or in another episode. I know we have to, more to get to, but what we don't talk about is how the Civil War, unfortunately, ravished this notion of us being a nation of states that have their own sovereignty and have their own identity. What we have now, post-Civil War, is this notion that we are one country, and we're supposed to have a one-size-fits-all kind of government, and by extension of that, a set of values that get to be decided on by the bureaucracy, by the administrative state, and we don't have any say. We have to basically go along with what the elitists say and what the powers that be and the experts say is the best course of action for humanity. But that's not what America is. America is a nation of states. And anyway, I could go on and on and on, but I'll leave it there.
I think one.
Oh, go ahead, Quisha.
I think one thing that the founding fathers had a firm grip on that we do not have in American society today, and with all this enlightenment and knowledge that we have gained over the last 2 centuries, they had a firm grip on humanity and the reality of humans, that we're flawed and we will lean to our be led by nefarious things at times, and that human beings are corrupt, the heart is wicked.
And by the way,
they knew that. They understood.
By the way, Quisha, I'll be remiss if I don't mention this. Most of the founding fathers, and I'll stand by this, most of the founding fathers were Protestant Christians, were devout Christians, especially John Adams. Most of the founding fathers that you hear about, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, others, James Madison, were deists. These are the main people that you hear about, but that's part of the manipulation. That's part of the game. But most of the ones that you don't hear about were genuine Protestant, devout, Bible-believing Christians. But you never hear their names. You hear the top 6, right? Who were deists and who were kind of indifferent on the question of religion, kind of different on the question of God's existence. And what this does is it gives a kind of pathway to the postmodern secularists to make an argument for a separation of church and state. But when you look at the concoction of the Constitution, when you look at the debate that was being had over federalism versus anti-federalism, the input was coming predominantly from genuine Protestant, Bible-believing, sold-out Christian men. And so, yes, and we are a Christian nation, but you don't really hear about that from the prevailing historians, because they try to say, well, no, the mainstream founding fathers were deists. They were kind of indifferent on the question of religion. And so we really are a country that is supposed to have a separation of church and state.
And this is what I meant, when I brought up the philosophy, or part of the philosophy of Max Horkheimer, when he says that liberalism, and from his standpoint, promoted this idea of anti-mythology, and in that, this anti-mythology position became mythology. And what he's saying is, he's talking about this escape from the belief in God. They'll characterize it as superstition, but that's what he means. And so anti-God, or atheism, so to be more precise, became like the new religion. In the words of another one of my favorite Jews, Mr. Dennis Prager, one of the staunchest defenders of the Christian faith in the country that we have going right now, although he's not a professing Christian, he says that, of course, secularism is the world's fastest growing religion. So this is secular. This is the left-hand path, as they call it, if you know anything about the occult. And this is why we understand the deep roots of left-wing philosophy. It's rooted in the occult. Probably don't want to open up those can of worms, but if you study, again, the left-hand path is all about the human will, right, and putting man at the focus and making man the central point, right, of his own consciousness, as opposed to submission to a kind of higher power. It puts man to the fore. There is no need for any sort of submission to a higher power, which, according to the definitions of this occult polemic, is the right-hand path as opposed to the left-hand path. That's why when you read, and Chad brought this character up some time ago, someone like Aleister Crowley, even when you read his works and his attitudes, sounds extremely similar to some mainstream political talking points that you'll hear from a lot of leftists, not just in the United States, but the world over. But very, very similar. Satanism, Luciferianism, all of these are examples in the occult of the left-hand path. Again, I don't mean to sound sensational or take it there, but we're always talking about how this is a spiritual war and so on and so forth. Well, that is a lot truer, perhaps, than some folks even realize. But yeah, there is no in between. It's either this or is that. The whole notion of the separation of church and state has been taken and exploited and bastardized to the point of people don't even recognize the true meaning and the intent. When Thomas Jefferson wrote that letter to that church in Virginia, what he actually meant. But again, to Chad's point, many of the founding fathers were, in fact, Protestant Christians. They weren't these spiritualists or these deists that some of them were, to Chad's point. He's correct, but most of them were not. But you don't hear about that. And so it's just extremely ignorant to hear this woman say the things that she is saying.
Yeah. And she's the one talking with her husband there. So, it's pretty clear, just he's sitting there like a dummy. She's a ventriloquist.
That's always the case, huh?
Yeah, just always had the man there being silent and the woman talking.
Shout out to Vic. He gifted 5 memberships. Shadow Jackson YouTube channel memberships. Thank you. That goes toward the making of other documentaries, which I'm excited about and that I'm happy to get out. So thank you for that, Vic. I really appreciate you, Vic. You're always coming through, and you've been a great supporter of the show. So I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. We got one from Jesus Loves You, $2. Says, God bless the chat, Quisha, Chad, Chuck, and Blanche. Thank you. Really appreciate it. I got one from Oh Really. Says, God gave us a reprieve on November the 5th. I guess he's referring to the election of Donald John Trump. But it's interesting because for me, and I've told this story many times, so I'll try to make this brief. But whenever we were touring Littleton 2, prior to its release, we were going around the country showing the film in many theaters and doing a Q&A after the fact. And many of the questions that, or one of the questions that I would get consistently, regardless of if I were in Florida or Orange County, California, or New York, or what have you, a question that I would get time and again was, what do you think about the 2020 election, right? And do you think it was stolen? And I would say, yeah, I do believe it was stolen, but at the same time, as a believer in God, I believe that everything happens in his providential will. And if God wanted to prevent Joe Biden and Kamala Devi Harris from becoming the new administration in 2020, he would have prevented it. And I feel as if, God wanted to remind Americans that it is he who sits on the throne, and that we aren't supposed to put all of our hopes and aspirations and dreams in the person of Donald Trump. And so I feel that it was a way of, in a sense, quelling the cult that was basically gathering up around Donald Trump. And so it was a reminder that we as believers, especially, are supposed to get on our knees and worship God and not man. And so for me, I wasn't as negatively impacted by by Joe Biden becoming president, because I know that Christ is the one who sits on the throne, regardless of who's in the White House. So, things are going to happen in the world. You're going to have the changing of regimes, the changing of superpowers. This is kind of par for the course as it relates to humanity. You're going to have the pendulum swinging back and forth, whether naturally or by force, by plan, whether it be the World Economic Forum or whomever. These are things that are going to happen in the course of history, but it doesn't change the fact that God sits on a throne. And so, is it possible that November 5th was a reprieve? Is it possible that, I don't know? Oh, really? It maybe Chuck and Blanche can connect me or correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure where Quisha went, but with all due respect, your statement presumes that God somehow lost in 2020. And I don't believe that to be true. I genuinely don't believe that to be true. We can find temporary rest in the course of mankind and the course of history by the election of this president or by the removal of that president and so on and so forth, by the implementation of this policy and the eradication of that policy. You know, these are things that happen in mankind, in humanity. But the reality of it all is, as Christians, we are to bear fruit in season and out of season, whether it's Donald Trump in office or whether it's Kamala Harris in office or whether it's Joe Biden in office. We are supposed to have a peace that surpasses understanding. And I think we miss that often. And so you could perhaps be saying that by the election of Donald Trump, it was a kind of rest bit for American society, at least for a season, at least for the next 4 years. That could be what you're saying. But what I don't want Christians to put into their mind is that God won in 2024, whereas he didn't win in 2020. And we have to keep letting God win by electing Republicans to office. I don't want you to put that into your mind, because the reality of it is, regardless of who is in office, God is on the throne. Do you, Chuck or Blanche, have any response to that at all?
Blanche, we can go first.
Yeah, I don't know if I really meant that God lost. I think I really was saying that, you know, God gave us a reprieve. It's more or less that God has been in control, but just this time we got a reprieve. Maybe alluding to what you said, that God had to remind us that, you know, I'm still on the throne. I mean, I look at it like this, you know, God selects the leaders, and at the end of the day, whoever's in office, the onus is on the people, because it's our job to hold them accountable. I think that the problem is that too many people are willing to just say all this nonsense. I'm asking, what are you going to do about it? If you tell me that this is going on and this is going on, this is going, okay, what are you going to do? And the answer is always crickets. So at the end of the day, if it's Kamala in office or Donald Trump, you still got to hold them accountable. If it's Genghis Khan in charge, you got to hold them accountable. The issue is the people not holding these folks accountable. So that means if you don't like, guess what? The same way the Bliggities can tear up stuff for George Floyd, it should be the same reaction when the government oversteps their bounds. So again, they've proven throughout history that when they get upset at something, they can react to it a certain way. At the end of the day, the power rests in the people. So it doesn't really matter who's in office. If God's still on the throne, we're going to hold them accountable. Then who does it matter is in office? They have to bend to the will of the people. If they don't, get them up out of there. So at the end of the day, that's my mindset on this whole who's in charge. Guess what? I'm not going to be terrorized. I'm not putting on masks and ducking behind. I'm not doing none of that stuff. So either come get me or leave me alone. But at the end of the day, we got to hold these folks accountable. And I just think that it's just become more commercial and I guess more cool to say, man, they all the same. You know, it's all, I mean, people are saying that, but I'm like, what are you going to do about it? So what you're saying is you're going to sit there and take what they're dishing out. I said, we've been through this for the past, y'all saw what they're capable of in 2020, 2021. And y'all still saying the same thing. That didn't wake y'all up. That didn't make y'all have no kind of fire. You couldn't work. You couldn't go here. You got to put this, like y'all that didn't stir up some kind of fight or a fire or something. They didn't. Y'all still are saying, man, they all the same, man. And I just like, I don't know. So we got to hold them accountable. That's my
right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm with you there, Blanche, man. Just this the cynicism, this whole everything, you know, both sides are the same, and there's all this obsession with this thing or another, you know, worrying about what's going on in Hollywood and entertainment, Puff Daddy, everybody's wondering, well, what's the next domino to fall? Who was at these freak offs with Puffy? Just all this craziness, all this foolishness about this conspiracy, that one. It's just nothing but fodder for social media. So that people can make content. How is it actually making you a better person? How is it actually making you a more informed citizen? How is that in fact bringing you closer to God in a serious way? It's about you. It's about how you feel. It's about what you believe in, because this is your life. And ultimately, this country belongs to you. I've said it before. Blanche just said it so eloquently, that insofar as you still believe, all of this talk about this agenda or that agenda, as long as there is breath in your lungs, that's just it. You're either gonna lay down or you're gonna stand up, or you're gonna fight, and that's just it. And if those of us who actually truly believe in God, know what it takes and know what it means to sacrifice, and we aren't afraid to die. If it means keeping or remaining in line and staying true to our principles and to our values, as our God instructs us to do, period, point blank. And so you cannot, when the people have God on their side, you can't. What can you do to them? You can't scare them. You can't. I love when I hear these atheists. Oftentimes they're politically they're left of center. They always make claims that religion oppresses and God oppresses, and more wars have been caused in the name of religion than anything else. All of these are lies, of course, because faith does not make you a slave. Faith is actually liberating. It's the opposite. But to O'Reilly's point, maybe O'Reilly was speaking more so figuratively, because I get it. If God is in control of all things, and God was certainly in control of this past election, just as he was in 2020. And I certainly voted for Donald Trump for a reason, because I think that he will be better for the country over the next 4 years. And so in that sense, yes, I guess we were given a reprieve in a sense. But I just, as a whole, just as a general principle, me personally, I'm not a person who likes to, I'm not saying I really did this, but it just reminded me that I'm not one of those type of people that makes these kind of statements about, me, how you hear oftentimes, especially on social media, people making predictions, oh, this is it, and this is the end, and it, and I as far as that happening, and the mark of the beast and all this stuff, and everyone is so sure that they know precisely what John meant when he wrote the epistles, and what this means and what that means, and who the Antichrist is going to be, what the Antichrist actually means. It just, I just don't make those kinds of statements, because perfect example, the apostles themselves thought the end of the world was imminent, and here we are over 2,000 years later, and we're still here. So I don't know what God is actually doing. I know he's working, but it's just me trying to be humble, so as not to pretend or feign this connection, this deal, as if I can truly understand the mind of God and truly understand his work and what exactly he's doing and what he's doing it for. Because ultimately, I'm just sitting back and I'm trying to figure it out. And I guess in the end, I guess we'll know, right? Hindsight is 2020. I don't know why God does the things that he does all the time. And I think for those of us who try to gain an understanding of it are the ones who truly suffer from these psychological issues. Why is there suffering? Why does this happen? Why is that happen? It's like, I don't think that's the important takeaway from life in general. But maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't make those kinds of statements because I don't want to pretend to know, because I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, like going back to what the super chat says or insinuates, I do agree with O'Reilly in that, again, everything that happens within God's providence. And as finite, limited human beings who don't know it all, who can see everything on a horizontal basis, we can't see everything on a bird's eye view because it's impossible. We're not omniscient. We're not omnipresent. We're not we're not good. We're genuinely not good. It's only for Christ that we are made good in the eyes of God. But you know, we can't explain why.
Yeah, that's my point.
Right. We can't explain why. What's his name? Who is the leader over North Korea? What's his name?
Kim Jong-un.
Yeah. We can't explain why he is the leader over North Korea. We can't explain why Xi Jinping is the leader over China. We can't explain why Biden was able to steal the election in 2020. We can't explain these things on a horizontal kind of ground level view. We can't explain why there's pedophiles, why there is this attempt to groom children, even in the schools and school libraries. We can't explain these things, right? But they are happening. And it's important for those of us who are his remnant, those of us who are believers, to be made aware of the fact that these things are happening, that we might then be put into a position where we're seeking God's face for the disaster that is mankind. But is the victory of Donald Trump in 2024 a reprieve? Is it a sign that we're headed in the right direction? I don't know. Because will JD Vance win in 2028, or will it be someone who was of the same ilk as Kamala Devi Harris?
So the Democrats will rise again. There'll come a time. This happened when, after the Civil War, the Republicans dominated for a time. It didn't seem as though there would be another Democrat president. Then Woodrow Wilson came, the Progressive Era came, and then we had the electoral dominance of FDR. But we saw how long the Democrats dominated Congress for 40, 50 years. There was no Republican majority Congress for about 4 decades, until the Gingrich Revolution in the mid-1990s. And then when Reagan came, saw the rise of the Reagan era. And then many people believe that George Herbert Walker Bush decimated the Reagan coalition, and it splintered off into men like Ross Perot and Pat Buchanan and so on. And then we saw, the Democrats and Bill Clinton rise again. And so there's going to come a time when the Democrats will be in control of the government again. What's going to happen? What kind of Democrat Party will it be? I don't know, but this won't last forever.
It won't. It won't. And that's my point, Chuck, is that like we can't put our faith in the political system. We still vote. We still advocate for the best politician in a given era, but we must not lose sight of the fact that it is Christ who sits on the throne, and irrespective of what goes on in humanity in history, irrespective of who's president and what policies are implemented, we have to remember that we are on this side of heaven, and that there will come a day when lions will lay down with the lamb, and the serpent won't be a threat, and that day is forthcoming, but it's certainly not now. Quisha, do you want to speak to this at all before we move on to the next super?
Yes. So I think I said this before. I said I think that this was it was another chance that we had. I do believe that it is God. It's God giving us grace to see, to hopefully to bring more people into the kingdom. I mean, that's the goal, for the grace, and to make your own, so your own faith can be stronger, so you can actually show the world, if you are a believer already, show the world who Christ is through how you live your life, through what you do, through the things that you put your hand to. And I wanted to say before that so we had our family like Sunday Bible study, and so it was my turn, and I was talking about deception and how we need to be discerning, just different things. And we were reading Galatians 6, I think it's 7-9, and it's the scripture where Paul is, he's writing to
Great passage, by the way.
Church. Huh?
That's a great passage, by the way. Go on.
Yeah, it says, "Do not be deceived. God will not be mocked. Whatever a man sows, that shall he reap. If you sow into the flesh, you'll reap from the flesh. If you sow into the spirit, you'll reap from the spirit." And I brought that up. It made me think about it, because when we're looking at the West and the other parts of the country and other parts of the world, and we see all of these people who are they have gotten further away from God, just America in general, and then the West and other parts of the world, further away from God. And it is like when I look at the left, a lot of times they're constantly trying to rejigger society. They're trying to remake man into their own image. And when I was reading that scripture, it spoke to me in a different way that I had never really thought about before. He says, "Do not be deceived. God will not be mocked. Whatever a man sows, that shall he also reap." And it goes to the principle of God, a principle of sowing and reaping. I don't care what situation, I don't care who you are, that principle will always exist. And so for anybody, the left or anybody, the right, whoever, anytime you try to move away from God's principle, if you try to act outside of God's principle, you're mocking God. It's a mockery to God. It's laughable that you even think that you could sow something. You could try to force somebody to do something. You could sow negativity or sow evil, but reap righteousness. And that's exactly what these people are doing, and which is why they are being so deceived, because they're trying to make the world in their own image, which is a violation of God's principle, if that makes sense. So anytime you violate God's principle, you're being deceived to even think that you could violate his principle and actually come out with something good. Do you guys understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So it's just, I don't know. Trying to rejigger things, trying to move outside of God's principles, where if it's sowing and reaping or gravity, you can't do it. Like you have to work within his boundaries, and anytime you move outside of that, you're going to be off, you're going to be wrong. And I actually, for me, from the way my mind works, I like to ask God questions. I was one of those people. I needed to understand, why does evil exist? Like I needed to know these kinds of things for Christianity to make sense to me. So I think I'm one of these people. I think you should ask God questions, and because I believe in a personal God, and I believe he'll answer them. Now, it might not be the answer you want, but he is faithful, I believe, to answer. And some people like me, we're like, well, why does this happen? Why do these things happen? Anyway, so yeah, sorry, my computer is all jacked up, and I was coming in and out of the conversation, but I just wanted to add my 2 cents with that.
Yeah. Did you have anything, Blanche, before we move on to the next super?
No, go ahead. You finish super.
Okay. Let's see here. Where am I at? Here I am. Oh, really? Okay. So we got one from Martin Towns, he says, rest in peace, Patricia rather, Dixon, and may God give comfort to her family. Am I missing something? Who's Patricia Dixon?
I know he said that. Go ahead, Keisha.
Oh yeah, she was a conservative commentator, not like on Facebook and YouTube and stuff like that. But yeah, she was an older Black woman. But yeah, she passed away recently.
Oh no, not her.
Yeah, I know she is.
Yeah, with the short haircut. She was in the
Yeah.
military. Yeah, she did. Very sad.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
May God bless her family.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Patricia Dixon, and may God give comfort to her family. For those who don't know her, she was well known for conservative YouTube content. My family is full of
bliggities.
Patricia, in my mind, was my Black conservative aunt. I think you're supposed to say auntie. I mean, I think you that's a violation there. 50 lessons for you for not saying auntie. For Annie.
That'll be $8.
Hey, Blanche, man, this word bliggity is really taking off, man. You might want to see get a lawyer, see if you can copyright that boy or something.
Yeah, you should patent that.
Hey, I'm his manager. We'll negotiate those contracts.
Oh, really? Again, Proverbs 29 verse 2, chapter 29 verse 2 says, in case you couldn't get to the last week or get to it last week, speaks of Trump, then Biden and Camilla. Proverbs 29 verse 2. What does that say? What is that verse?
let me see.
That's not one that pops in my mind or one
Bliggity History Month.
Memorized.
Right.
When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked bear the rule, the people mourn.
There you go. Let man be a lie and God be truth. Let's see here. MC says, sick of soy boy sassy sissies like Bakari and Van. Granted, I don't really watch CNN. Sorry, Keisha? What'd you say, Keisha?
I just said soy boy sassy sissies.
Right.
Yeah, I don't really watch CNN all that much, but I know that Bakari Sellers, and I specifically remember him because of his haircut. You know, he always had this kind of like buzz kind of fade going on. But I haven't really seen him on CNN all that much recently. But again, like he completely missed the mark. And I wrote an article for the Blaze Media. I'm not sure if they're going to run it. In fact, I'm sure that they're not going to run it because we're so far past the election of Donald Trump. But I wrote an article from the Blaze specifically as it relates to the elitist kind of response to the election of Donald Trump being a kind of resurgence of white supremacy and bigotry and homophobia and all this other nonsense that they are claiming, and how they missed the mark, how they're out of touch, how they don't really see the fact that there is still a very large contingent in America who believe that America should be America, and that America shouldn't be Africa, that America shouldn't be Europe, that America shouldn't be any other continent or nation, but America should be America. And so long as they continue to play this kind of identity politics and accusing everybody of being xenophobic and racist and all these things, like how that is losing its way, that how that is not as effective as it would have been in the early 2000s when Barack Hussein was running for president. It just isn't as effective, especially with Gen X, Millennial, and Gen Z, who don't have this kind of nostalgic attachment to the civil rights movement. You have to come up with new tactics, because calling everybody homophobic and sexist and racist just isn't working anymore. And that's the point that I made in the article. And this kind of symbolism of putting somebody up for a specific cabinet position for no other reason than the fact that they are black or woman or LGBT or whatever the case may be, people just aren't interested in that anymore. They're just not, especially in the dawn of red pill content and the dawn of conservative content and the dawn of social media. Quite frankly, people are just not moved or manipulated by this identity politics. And so you have to come up with something else. And so for Bakari Sellers or for Van Jones to talk about how there's a this is a white lash. This is a America who just doesn't like the fact that America is becoming browner. You're out of touch. You have to come up with something else, because it's not working anymore. Panel, do you have any response to that before we move on to the next super?
That was great, man. Did you see the clip? They were sitting at the little round table, and I forgot the token Republican, the guy on there, token conservative. He's always on that CNN panel, just giving them fits. Just a one-man wrecking crew, white guy. You all know his name. Those clips are always going viral of him just going to town on the CNN panels. But did you guys catch that one clip when this one black guy was talking about how, of course, they're trying to explain how or why Kamala lost. And he's talking about, with girls having to share their intimate spaces with boys and competing in boy sports. And this white guy sitting across from him, I mean, he just went ballistic when the guy referred to transgender girls by their actual sex. He called them boys, and he just went into a tirade. He wouldn't even let the guy finish talking. I will not sit here and listen to this transphobia. I'm not gonna put up with it. I don't want to hear it. And he's like, dude, you're not even gonna let me finish talking. It's like all I did. He used the word boy, and this guy just went insane. And I said, see. Keep it up. Again, like you said,
let them dig their own grave. As far as
they just don't get it. They don't get it. Case in point.
I mean, that's the thing. I know Quisha talks a lot about how Republicans need to strategize at the local level and include the grassroots of that. People need to be involved. And I get what she's saying, and I agree with what she's saying, because Republicans need to be more strategic in what they're doing. But at the same time, these leftists are kind of like making it easy for us. They just are, because they insist on this identity politics and accusing everybody of being racist and bigots. And that's just not working anymore. And so, as far as I'm concerned, keep doing that. Keep letting us win these elections. Keep letting us, thrive, as it were, in Western countries by assuming this kind of elitist posture and trying to beat everybody over the head for not seeing things the way you see them. Keep doing that, because this is only going to move people further to the right. So I'm not even sure where Quisha went. She left.
She had her computer crashed. She just texted.
Jero B, super sticker, thank you. Really appreciate it. $10. JV the great, thank you. Love the super chat. Thank you. I follow him on Twitter. Great content. Thank you. Got one from Mountain Woman. $1 super sticker. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Let us play this other clip. Let's see here. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? I'm not even sure where this thing went. So there, folks. I'm trying to find this clip. All right.
Got it?
Yeah, I got it. I found it. Here it goes.
Jesus loves you. Say Black Friday is coming up. Check out Best Buy. Got new laptops and computers.
What a mess.
Yeah,
All right.
government want to invest.
Man, why can't I? Okay, here it goes.
Shit, I know I
European
need one.
elites, of course they hate Trump because they understand President Trump is a populist nationalist. They understand about what he's talking about is trade. They understand what he's talking about tariffs. They understand he puts American citizens first, and he puts American citizens' economic benefit first. European elites, of course they hate Trump because they understand President Trump is a populist nationalist. They understand about what he's talking about is trade. They understand what he's talking about tariffs. They understand he puts American citizens first, and he puts American citizens' economic benefit first.
Donald Trump is a populist nationalist. What say you, Chuck?
Populist nationalist. Yeah, I think what Bannon is saying, he's saying that, I mean, people want, they want sovereignty. They want representatives that do the will and the bidding of the people who put them in office. And this is what I think Bannon means, just broadly speaking, that there seems to be a popular, I guess, coalition or movement. You see a lot of people, because of course they define this want of, or this need or value of sovereignty, should I say? All right, the fact that people value national sovereignty. This has become a right-wing thing, right? For better or for worse, right, wrong, or indifferent. This has become a right-wing thing. But now you're seeing those who probably have more liberal values than someone like myself, politically speaking, are now saying like, hey, before we can even get to the fine details of domestic policy or even some foreign policy in terms of our military endeavors, how do we approach dealing with our allies and our enemies abroad, such and so forth, before we can even get to that, the little funny things you would argue and debate with people about when it came to politics every 2 years, every 4 years, and then when it was all said and done, no matter who won elections, no one took to social media. There was no social media at this time. No one went out there and made videos of themselves yelling and shrieking and screaming and making fools of themselves. There was none of that. There was none of this. Disinvite family members and friends to Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner, and so there was none of that, right? But you're now seeing this popular coalition of people who may disagree on some of America's fine political details coming together to say this whole thing that we see taking place, this global international Marxist agenda, which is what this is when you're talking about the World Economic Forum and whatever, right? You're seeing in this concept of intersectionality on steroids, because this is the new this is the new proletariat, right? This is the whole thing that they plan on doing. They're trying to create the condition for revolution, right? To figure out how can we bring Marx and Engels' vision to fruition. We have to deliberately create the conditions for revolution, and that's what a part of this mass migration or infiltration is all about. And you're seeing people say, wait, this is an existential, right? The left loves that word. This is an existential crisis. You can say whatever you want to say. I may not have been some dyed-in-the-wool conservative. I was was no Pat Buchanan, Reaganite, Goldwater guy or whatever. I wasn't some Rush Limbaugh sycophant or anybody like that. But you're seeing it with Joe Rogan coming out. Here's a guy who has been apolitical at best. At worst, he was probably far more left wing,
socially liberal.
Yeah, socially liberal. You got guys like Russell Brand, Tim Pool, who, you know, seems to be a nice guy. Chad was on Tim Pool's program about a year or so ago. So, you know, this is what I mean. This is what I think Bannon means when he's saying, you know, populist nationalism, populism, because you're seeing people who are not necessarily conservative, but who are saying, we notice what the left is doing, and what the so-called left is doing is legitimately an existential crisis. And we need to fix this first. And then maybe further down the trough, we can start to debate some of the fine details of American policy. But first and foremost, if we don't handle this, there will be no politics. There will be no America to debate over, because we are literally under attack. And so I think just looking at the positive aspect of what Bannon is saying, I get that. But I think, to my point, once we have, I mean, maybe we'll never overcome it or fix it, but there is going to come a time when we're going to have to figure a lot of these things out, right? You look at RFK, you look at Tulsi Gabbard. You know, Tulsi Gabbard is a woman. I mean, I don't know necessarily think she's a bad woman or anything like that. But a lot of people have forgotten some of the things that Tulsi Gabbard said in the past when she was a part of the Democrat Party. Of course, you know, Democrats, because she wouldn't fall in line, because, you know, I guess the upper echelon within the Democrat Party could not control her, I guess. And she did have some kind of slither of independent thought within her. I guess she was somewhat of a threat to the Democrat Party, or at least that's the way it was presented. But she has said some things, done some things that I just was like, what the hell is this woman talking about? I don't agree with her. I don't agree with her. But all of a sudden she stepped up, became a Republican, and it was like, yeah, you know, we're winning. We got Tulsi. It's like, but Tulsi Gabbard is not, she's not a conservative woman.
Yeah, too.
I don't like, I mean, I don't know, say I don't like Tulsi Gabbard. I don't like her as a, but you get what I'm saying. Politically, I don't agree with Tulsi Gabbard. So at some point we're going to have to address this. Robert F. Kennedy, you know, I'm not a Kennedy guy. Never have been, and perhaps I never will. But I'm not impressed by these people. Some of you all are. I'm not impressed by these people. So that's, you know, I think that's maybe why Chad came to me first.
Can you acknowledge that like, while you might disagree with someone like a RFK Jr. Philosophically on his approach to politics, would you at least be willing to kind of like agree with his stance on energy policy or health policy?
Yeah, I mean, that could be true. I mean, that could be true. You know,
the same with you know, Tulsi as it relates to intelligence.
Yeah.
Do you think that Donald Trump is right to like kind of put these people in their own lane as it relates to the things that they care most about? Because I agree with you. I don't agree with Tulsi in terms of like where she stands philosophically as a whole. But when it comes to intelligence and war, I'm inclined to agree with some of her sentiments.
Yeah,
it's true of like, you know, RFK Jr. as it relates to health and energy. Do you think Trump is right to like bring them on and say, look, you focus on this kind of like small pocket of domestic policy or foreign policy, but you're not going to have access to everything else? I
don't have a problem with that.
You did that.
I don't have a problem with that. I agree with that. I understand that. You know, I think that Tulsi may be good, you know, in some limited capacity. Same with RFK Jr. I think he can, you know, work well in assisting the administration on a, you know, from a cabinet point of view or perspective. I agree with that. But I'm concerned to some degree that I don't want this more populist kind of left of center sort of vibe becoming like the main, the middle, if you will, or the core, the central component of American conservatism. Because if that's the case, then conservatism, as I understand it, you know, it may be dead in America. This cannot be, you know, the Tulsi Gabbard, the RFK vibe, the energy. I don't think that should be the bedrock of American conservatism, because again, we'll just be in a bad way, because you can choose from now. You got the radicals over here. It's like, yeah, Tulsi and them. They may not be like radical and crazy and insane. And I think, to Tulsi's credit, I would be remiss. I don't mean to attack her. I genuinely think she's probably, a patriot. RFK is a patriot, probably. Perhaps he loves his country. Again, he doesn't want to see the country destroyed. And this is why I think that this whole realignment with Trump, as they're calling it, the new Trump coalition, the new kind of Trumpian electorate, I think this is what's driving this. But, I would be remiss if I didn't say that I didn't have some concerns. But I do think that Tulsi Gabbard and RFK can probably function well in a very limited capacity. But there's certain things that I just don't agree with, especially how a lot of folks are put forth a lot of these slogans and talking points, and they become like axiomatic as far as from a I guess general principle point of view. And I'm like, no, things are more complicated than that, right? This whole thing, I give you a perfect example. This whole thing about the United States and its involvement in foreign wars, right? Or certain catchphrases like the military-industrial complex. It's like, dude, you are discussing and dealing with complicated, complex issues involving life and death. This is not just simply a matter of, well, the United States shouldn't do this, the United States shouldn't do that. No, every individual situation should be looked at prudentially. Some things should be involved, some things should, and to what extent and at what cost. But oftentimes folks take the lazy route, and all of a sudden some slogan or another becomes just kind of all-encompassing explanation for things that are far more complex and complicated than we like to give them credit for, like issues of war and peace. And oftentimes this has become a part of the new Trump thing, this whole America first, whatever you want to call it. This is the same exact thing under Charles Lindbergh back in the 1930s, 1940s, across France with the Cologne-Briand Pact. These things are actually what led to the rise of Hitler in the Soviet Union, this posture that we can make an agreement not to have any more wars. It just doesn't work like that, because wars are not simply a matter of profit because some people benefit financially from there being conflict. Sure. But this is the kind of conspiratorial mind that's a part of this new neo-populist coalition, because the fact of the matter is that what is at the heart of war, more times than not, isn't profit. But wars are started by way of conviction, because people have a belief in something that they're actually willing to die for. When you say that there are people in other parts of the world who look at you and don't hate you simply for existing, I think you are denying something that is fundamental as far as human nature is concerned, and things that we will have to deal with until the end of time. And that's just one example, and it's, again, there's too many people who are coming up with these catch-all phrases that explains all things. And this is what we need to do. And we need to change this. And we need to change that. And I see a lot of this. I called it a long time ago. I did a live stream on my Instagram channel, and I called it conservative utopianism, is what I like to call it. Conservatives are starting to think that they are, in fact, utopian solutions, the same way in which the left has long always been in the spirit of doing. I've seen a lot of that on the right as well. So that's just my whole thing. I'm sorry.
Blanche, do you have any, response to anything that Chuck just said?
Yeah, I mean, I don't trust Tulsi Gabbard, aka Mona Lisa. I don't trust RFK. At the end of the day,
by the way, Chuck, and maybe we can get to this later, if Blanche doesn't cover it, but I noticed, I guess I took mental note of the fact that, you mentioned RFK and you mentioned Tulsi, but you didn't mention Vivek. And maybe there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Hold on, Blanche. Before you get started, like our buddy Stephen Carter said in the chat, he said Chuck is using neocon talking points that have little basis in reality. See, that's what I'm talking about. Everything that I just said is just dismissed as a neocon talking point. That's what I'm talking about, man. You know, it's just, I mean, there have been wars on a massive scale before the whole concept of neocon was even a thing. They're going to be wars long after the whole term neocon has been forgotten. But that's a perfect example. I'm not trying to come at Stephen Carter or anything like that. He has his point of view, and I respect him because, you know, he's here and he contributes to the show. But it's just, that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Just call me a neocon and just dismiss everything that I said. Like it just had no little basis in reality. It's in his words. That's what I'm talking about, man. That's what we're doing now.
Well, I mean, the problem is, again, and I still go back to American history of oppressor and oppressed. So anytime we're talking about war and America's involvement, it's always America's wrong, which means by default, the other people are right. So what folks don't realize is, and I told somebody this the other day, imagine if there's no white countries to migrate to. Imagine if all these people can't flee these quote unquote places and go to a white nation. What happens? What is the collateral damage of these folks not being able to leave and having to stay under these governments? It's going to be a war. And so again, so when we talk about wars and fighting, it's always America is wrong. But these people never go to these places to see how these folks live. When people come over, they tell you how bad it is in these countries. And so I just think that the problem is that how we view the globe economically, politically, is from a media, Hollywood, left viewpoint. It's not from an objective viewpoint because, again, everybody assumes that America is the worst country on the planet. This is what everybody thinks. America has the power. They're doing this, they're doing that. I'm like, just because Iran isn't America doesn't mean they aren't doing worse things in America. Just because Japan ain't America don't mean they aren't doing. So you just assume because America is America that no other country is doing this. But had a friend of mine went to Nigeria recently, and he said he ain't going back. I said, why not? He said, man, the poverty is extreme. The police kept shaking us down. He said it's just like rich, poor. That's it. He said I didn't enjoy myself. And so again, Nigeria is a nation that people will claim is wonderful without anybody else's involvement. No, it's not true. At the end of the day, nobody wants to admit this. Without white, and I'm gonna say it just like this: without white involvement, the world spirals back into the dark ages. I'm sorry, you got to hear it from me. It spirals back into the dark ages because, and I say this, each group of people have their own gifts. White people's gifts is structure and order. Like white people don't like chaos, so they make sure they put systems in place that can run. Folks may not like it, but I guarantee the alternative. Okay. Our president says, okay, let's say America set everybody's affairs. Everybody, and then let's just say that whole side of the world is controlled by Islam. Now what? Now you got the whole side of the planet Islamic, and then you got America. Are they going to say, let's exist peacefully?
No.
Let's stay in kumbaya. Let's come together. Let's do trade. Let's do no. And so at the end of the day, the only reason we're able to even have these thoughts and these stances is because of the system that's already been set up in place, where you have freedoms to have these opinions, voice your opinions. You can't go to China and say you don't like Xi Jinping. You think you can get on here right now and say you hate Donald Trump with no consequence. You go to China and say you hate Xi Jinping, you're gonna end up stinking somewhere. It just is what it is. You're gonna be at the bottom of the ocean. So at the end of the day, I just think that we gotta start looking at something a little more objectively. All wars, even though people profit off of, all casualties get profited off of. It's not just wars. Any casualty, whether it be a storm, whether it be a hurricane, gets profited off of. I'm just saying that every war is not simply the U.S. stay out of it and let everybody else just have at it. No, that's not how that works. No.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Blanche. But yeah, you can't say that because then you get called. I mean, Vivek, you hear a lot of these types, you're either a warmonger or, to our buddy Stephen Carter say, I'm echoing neocon talking points and these kinds of things. You can't have serious conversations about serious, complex, complicated issues on a planet comprised of 7.5 billion people, all sorts of folks with, again, ambitions of doing things that seem so counter to everything that you believe in, but yet and still the reality is that these people are out here in the world and they actually exist, and either sometimes you have to deal with them or best believe they're going to come deal with you. And I know, we didn't want to talk about war and issues of foreign policy in particular, but this is one of the main things that I think about, because this is one of those commonly brought up talking points when you mention this new populist Trump coalition, this whole notion of, well, we no more endless wars. I mean, what are you talking about, and what does that even mean? To the extent that a war is endless is due in large part to the fact that we have generals and folks in our military who are so ideologically driven that they refuse to put an end to war by doing what needs to be done in order to break the will of your opposition. Because, of course, to cite someone like Tucker Carlson, who said that under no circumstance should the United States have nuked Japan, and that we completely lost the moral high ground when we decided to use an atom bomb or nuclear bomb against an adversary in war. How dare we? We should have never done that, says Tucker Carlson, as if it's our fault. As if, Japan was the victim and we were the perpetrators because we won and they lost. This is the kind of stuff that, what kind, I mean, could you imagine, where are the George S. Pattons in America today? Well, where are they? There's the peace through strength. There's this notion of preparing for war so that you can, in order to maintain peace, you must prepare for war. All of these kinds of things, right? To Blanchard's point, if the other half of the world is Islamic, or if the other half of the world is under the sway of the CCP, you have some countries, so much for the Monroe Doctrine, that are under the sway of the CCP in our own hemisphere. We have Chinese communist spies in our own country, on our college campuses with their 100 Talents program, the whole Belt and Road Initiative in places like Africa, and on and on and on. Best believe China is preparing for war. And I mean, you want to talk, you want to talk about people, we mentioned earlier about God giving us a reprieve, and can we really understand and analyze the mind of God and his intentions and why he does what he does? I say I don't make those kind of prophecies and predictions, but I will say with confidence that I believe wholeheartedly that China is preparing for war. And they will, and they are going to strike. I would not be surprised if we were, in fact, in World War III within the next 10 to 15 years, because we have peoples in our government who are refusing to do what needs to be done, even those on the Republican side of the aisle. Make no mistake about it. China is preparing for war, period. And this has nothing to do with neocon talking points. It has nothing to do with any of that. What do you call the CCP? What kind of neocons are they? This makes no sense to me. Makes no sense to me at all. You can't exist. They cannot abide you, especially like Blanchard. When you start talking about radical, we talking about Islam, reading their doctrines and what they believe in and what they say about non-Muslim countries or countries ran by non-Muslims. Okay, you're gonna find out how greasy fat meat is real soon. You're gonna find out.
This is why, hello, I'm back. Y'all know it. Pray for it. Just pray. But and they told me that y'all was talking about me. They told me. I see the chat. We got. They my peoples. Okay. So no, but this is why I have such a problem with Tucker, Candace, and this whole thing. Yes, Patrice, I'm here. Because it's like, it doesn't seem like they understand. Again, this is kind of like what I was talking about earlier. They don't understand they don't understand reality. They don't understand what it's like on this side of heaven. They live it, but they don't quite understand it. I don't know if it's because they're new to Christianity, or I'm not sure, but you have to know that human beings are really wicked. And you can say what you want about the United States, but we have been how did we become that beacon of hope? We didn't become the beacon of hope for other countries abroad because we were some terrorists, you know, because I don't see these people running to Yemen. Are you running to Syria? Are you running to Iran or Iraq for freedom? And no, you're coming to the United States of America. So I think Blanche said it earlier. There is a reason. He was talking about how other people outside of the United States see those in the United States, and it's like, because we're in it and we're so blessed and we're so tucked off from a lot of the wickedness that goes on in the other parts of the world. It's like, oh my God, innocent people were killed, because it goes against our American idea, how we carry out justice and how we treat one another by and large in the United States of America. Everybody ain't like that though. They're not all like that. Yes, they will use their own people to shield, to build their
installations, the military installations.
Yeah, they're building these places. I forget what they are, but they're building them like under hospitals, under schools.
The military installations, the armory.
They're doing that.
And Quisha, and these people aren't under any sort of threat or duress. The majority of people see it as a badge of honor to die in service of the cause. They're lying to you when they tell you this. The extent to which the Arab Muslim population in that region of the world has been radicalized by UNRWA and by so with all the money we send to Israel, we send foreign aid to the so-called Palestinians as well, that they turn around and use to propagandize their children into becoming soldiers for the cause of global jihad. It's just funny how it doesn't go both ways, but folks often take the path of least resistance, because they know that there is a certain segment of people out here in the world who do in fact have the courage of their convictions, and they are willing to die for them. So like I said before, you either deal with that situation or that situation is going to come deal with you. I don't know why we think that this thing is just going to last forever, because they want to overtake you.
Exactly.
It's not make believe. It's not a conspiracy, like the Mossad or CIA, MI6 created this and who did that. Even to the extent, Quisha, that these threats exist, they only exist because we created them. It's always us. Right. It's never a battle of ideas, a battle of perspectives. It's always, no matter what, somehow the blame is always placed at our feet.
You know what it sounds like?
I don't buy it.
It sounds like progressives.
That's what I'm saying.
They're saying the same. I said this to somebody maybe like 3 years ago, because I started hearing a lot of the same stuff from the progressives on this has been bubbling in on the conservative side for a minute, at least in the last 4 years. But I'm like, what happens when so that's why it makes me a little nervous when we're talking about Tulsi and RFK, and I'm like, I don't like this.
But before I met you three superstars, Quisha, my girl, be all over Newsmax and stuff. Blanche got his tens of thousands of Instagram followers. Chad is, he's the man, of course. Back before I even met you guys, I probably had like 100 followers on Instagram. I swear I did a live stream sitting in my car. It's still on my Instagram page, and I uploaded it. I titled it Conservative Utopianism. I noticed this. It may have been 3 years ago. I noticed this, that conservatives began sounding a lot like progressives. This was before this previous election cycle. And I'm not saying that because I'm Nostradamus and nothing like that, Nicodamus, but I noticed it years ago. I said, but what is going on the so-called right? Have y'all lost y'all? I thought we the ones who really understood human nature. I thought we were the ones who had the wisdom and true discernment. You guys are sounding like utopians. I noticed this 3 years ago.
Bringing in this, he attracts this, this kind of thinking, which it's tough, because on one hand it's like he's had so many great qualities, and then on the other hand he has these other things. But anyway, I think Blanchard had to say something.
But Trump is not a squish. He's not a dove. You know what I'm saying? He's not that. You know, a lot of people, even during his first go at it as president of the United States, remember when he struck Syria, killing hundreds of Russians there in that proxy. A lot of people were upset with Trump because they said, well, Trump, you pledged not to expand America's involvement in the Middle East and this and that, and you said that we wouldn't get off into any more wars, and you know, so that upset a lot of people when he struck Syria. But you know, Trump is willing to, or he has shown in the past that he is willing to engage, you know, but more strategic in his engagement, whether it's, you know, assassinating you know, some of America's enemies, you know, leaders of these certain organizations and groups and so on and so forth. And this upset some people. It surely did upset some on the left for sure. But you know, he's no dove, so you know, I'm not too concerned. But again, like I mentioned, I am concerned, I guess, going beyond 4 years, exactly, you know, what's going to happen, because if you show weakness, your enemies will pounce.
Yeah, I think that even when they talk about terms like warmongers, they never apply to other people in other countries. It's just always Americans that are warmongers. I'm like, people start wars all the time in all these other Africa, like people start wars all the time in other places, but they never get called warmongers. I don't know. I just think that it still goes back to the foundation of how people view America. And America is viewed by people in America as the bad guy. It just is what it is. And so anytime America's involved in anything, then America's always the culprit. They're always the one initiating it. They're always the one benefited from it. It's never seemed like America's actually doing something good when it comes to any other nation. It's just always America doing something bad. I think the problem is that most Americans, first of all, don't travel outside of the world. And when they do travel, they stay at resorts and say they never go into the heart or the meat of what's going on with these people. And so it's easy to go somewhere and just say, oh, they're poor over there. My friend went over to Nigeria. He was around with the people and he was like, every cop we saw was shaking us down. He was like, this is crazy. But again, intimidation with the guns and everything. He said it was just poverty so extreme. And so again, we don't really know how the world operates because we're so comfortable in America. And you can say whatever you want to say. Nobody wants to live somewhere else outside of America without American money. Many folks say they want to leave the country, but you're only leaving the country with American money, which means you're not leaving the country. You're taking America with you to be able to live like a king in that country. That doesn't count. I'm saying you don't leave the country and leave your American money here, go start
over.
But you're not going to do that because you know you ain't going to never come out of the poverty. You're going to be like everybody else out there, get your head knocked off.
Leave your passport too.
Yeah, don't come.
You don't get to claim no parts of you. Don't get to use your American privilege. Leave the passport too.
but I just think that because we've been so programmed, we've been so indoctrinated and so propagandized, and like Chuck said, these slogans like warmongers, anti-war, we don't need any wars. Think about this. Think about how great America has to be for America to be the country that decides all the wars. Like you think that America is just saying, we like, okay, we're over here.
You better
you don't
not.
fight. Okay, y'all fight. I'm like, if America didn't get involved, these folks gonna still do what they're gonna do. People don't understand a world where America is not the, I don't know, what's the word? That America is not America. Like that America is not this globe. America's America, but it's actually global because it's America's hands are everywhere. People haven't seen a world without that. They don't know what a world would look like with no American involvement. But we do know that when the police were getting hit with the defund the police and they pulled back and they said, you know, we're gonna be hands off. We're gonna just sit back, not be proactive, and just let y'all. We just respond to the melee. We saw homicides went up. We saw assaults went up. We saw crime skyrocketed because the police just took their hands back. All I'm saying is we haven't seen a world without America's involvement. And I think we take it for granted because it's just easier to sit back and just get on your phone and say America sucks and just go live your best life. But I think the world is a lot more nuanced. We want to give it credit for. And like Quisha was saying, you don't know how bad these people are. You know, in countries, they don't even have elections. They just go and kill the person that's in charge and then just take it over. They don't even, ain't no due process. And then if anybody say that's wrong, they get mowed down too. If you think about Haiti, right now. The president of Haiti had to leave. He in South America somewhere. They done went to the prison, let the prisoners, 4,000 prisoners. Like, again, you can't even imagine that in America. You can't even fathom that kind of life in America. So I think we got to just stop falling for these easy solutions of just don't have any wars, just stop. That's not how that works. It ain't no just, because whether we want to fight or not, they're going to want to fight constantly.
They want to fight. Yeah.
Because, you know, Fred Blanchard's point, that's how they do it. These military hunters, you know, a lot of times, Idi Amin in Uganda is a perfect example. You know, the last king of Scotland, you know, it happens like that where, you know, you have these military generals, these military officials. You literally have to have the backing and the support of the military in order to stave off a coup. But that's what happens oftentimes in these countries where, of course, you know, the folks with the guns and the means to exact violence, and they are the ones who hold these countries in a perpetual state of fear, you know. So you have these military scourges, you know, all across the African continent and parts of Latin America. That's why it's so funny to hear these people talk about, you know, Trump is going to do this and do that, and you know how much. Anyway, man, the inside baseball, the palace intrigue, as they say, that one needs in order to actually orchestrate a legitimate coup, especially against a nation as powerful and as sophisticated as the United States. It's just funny to hear them make these claims that Donald Trump is actually planning on doing that. It's just not possible. But to the point too, with a lot of these new type of, you know, again, the term, you know, neocon, I hate to go back to that, but, you know, neo, of course, means new, con being short for conservative. You know, the term neocon was first associated with those former disillusioned Democrats who were originally a part of the FDR coalition that came out and switched their political allegiance during the Goldwater Revolution. They called them neocons back in the 1960s. Of course, we know when people use the term neocon, they typically associated with the regime of Bush Jr. with, you know, the likes of, you know, Rumsfeld and Cheney and so on and so forth. This marked a shift in America's foreign policy from the Reagan to the Bushes. Of course, you know, Bush believed in a more kind of pretense, a more proactive approach as opposed to a more containment type of style that Reagan had during the 1980s. But it's funny that, you know, the term new just remains new until like forever. But now we're actually seeing, Quisha, to your point, a new kind of conservative today. But I guess, you know, these aren't neocons, but yet and still, you know, the Cheneys and the Bushes of the world, they're old news, but they're still called new conservatives, even though their time is passé. But, you know, the Tulsi Gabbards of the world, no, these aren't the neocons, right? It's funny how that term just remains in the early 2000s for perpetuity. But yet and still, Tulsi Gabbard is not a neocon when she is literally the walking definition of a new conservative. She literally just switched her party affiliation, but she's no neocon. But, you know, these they cannot, for example, come after America's entitlement programs. Because one of the things they always talk about, you see these people on social media, I'm tired of my money going to Ukraine. I'm tired of my money going to there. Again, I'm not trying to get on any conflict in particular. You know, I know conservatives have a sweet spot when it comes to Ukraine and their government, because, of course, you know, it's Eastern Europe, and Ukraine is an immensely corrupt country. Its leadership, its president, we see, you know, what's going on there. There's been a long history with Ukraine and Russia and even Germany during World War II and so on and so forth. We won't even get into all of that. You know, so there's
I have a conspiracy theory about that.
Yeah, but my last thing I wanted to say, though, is that we get so upset about money being taxpayer dollars being used to fund foreign wars. But do you know that the military budget, because they have been hollowing out our military for years before Trump was elected the first time in 2016, but the military budget and the amount of money we spend on these sorts of things is but a mere fraction in comparison to the welfare industrial complex like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
Oh,
That's the bulk of that's the bulk of our budget. That's where we spend most of our money. You talk about inflation, you talk about this, you talk about America going bankrupt. America is not going bankrupt because it funds Israel or it funds Ukraine's war. That's not why America is bankrupt because of its entitlement programs. But how many Republicans will win an election if they campaign on that? Because you can't say that, well, I will, in fact, end Social Security if I am a Republican, because that's always a talking point of a Democrat running for office, is that the Republicans are threatening to end Social Security. They're threatening to end Medicaid because they don't care about seniors. But I'm not saying I don't care about them, but quite frankly, we can't afford it. But you can't say that. But you want to end foreign wars. But how about we end this war on our currency by shutting down these entitlement programs? You can't say that.
What about the Department of Education, their budget? That some of these rogue these alphabet agencies, they get tons of money. Nobody's ever talking about that. But here's my thing. I think for me, the reason why this Ukraine war right now is a problem for me is because we saw Joe Biden, while he was vice president, talking about he wasn't going to give $1 billion to the Ukrainian prosecutor. And then all of a sudden he becomes president. And now we at war with Ukraine and we sending all this money over there. I don't like that.
No, I get. Like I said, I get. That's why I put it in a nutshell, Quisha. I said that we know that Ukraine is an immensely corrupt government.
Yeah.
So I just put it in a nutshell by saying that we all saw, Joe Biden said, Obama said you ain't getting nothing. I said, oh yeah. I said, well, call him. Call him. He's sitting up there like he's second in command, like he Tom Hayden or Santino Corleone or something. Like who he think he is? Like he's talking to the speaking for the big man. Like he Luca Brasi or something. Like he tough. Joe Biden, man, sit yourself down.
Did y'all see Joe Biden? Sorry, Blanche. Did y'all see Joe Biden at the APEC economic, the photograph where he was in the back? The United States of America's president with the picture of the leaders, he was let me see if I can pull it up. He was in the back. How embarrassing. Let me show y'all this. This is bless his heart and all his parts, because Lord have mercy. Joe Biden is embarrassing. Look at
it's
this,
in the back.
It's insane. Oh, go ahead. You can. I'm pulling.
No, but I remember, Quisha, just to piggyback off that. This is one of the things. That's one of the things that I love. I know I'm petty. I'm a sucker for these kind of symbols. But remember that clip when Trump walked in? I forgot where he was, but the Prime Minister of Montenegro at a NATO meeting. Yeah, remember that clip when Trump walked in and he grabbed my man and pushed him out of the way. And stood there and fixed his blazer like, no, I'm here now. And literally grabbed him and threw him out the way and stood there like, I'm here now. That right there, that got to invigorate. See, that's America. That's the spirit. That's that make you want to wave an American flag right there. That's what we need. I love that, Clyde. That never gets old.
Look at this. Let's see if I can make this bigger. This is Joe Biden back here.
Oh my goodness.
This is the APEC Economic Summit, the Asia Pacific Economic Corporation, where they go and make deals in the Asia Pacific or whatever about trade. But he's in the back. He looks like he could be like the president of like Hungary or something. No shade to Hungary. I like Hungary. But I'm just saying, look at that. How embarrassing.
Well, I think, Quisha, this is for safety reasons too. In case he falls over, he can fall on the person in front of him. Well, if they put him in the front, he might just fall over on the floor. So I did.
Could you imagine if they tried to put Trump in the back?
Right. You think he gonna stand back there? No, he gonna push you out the way like he did with President of Montenegro. He gonna push you out the way.
Kamala wouldn't even go to the back. Like she wouldn't even go to the back.
That's so they sunned they sunned him. That was some straight I don't even want to say what it was, but that's a bad look.
Yeah, Trump wouldn't have had that. He'd have pushed through. I love that. Like move.
Yeah.
He
It would have been
grabbed
a
his.
whole press conference. Why Trump would, like, how he got to the
Listen.
front. Like, they would have news that it would have been breaking news.
Listen, a grown man though. It took his sport coat, took the lapel, and he did the, did that to straighten up his lapel and just pulled and just stood there like, nah, I'm front and center. We gonna make sure the optics on this is correct. Y'all not gonna have me standing in the back.
Wait, one more thing about Trump. I don't know if y'all remember this. Remember when he went and he was talking to the United Nations? This was like in 2017, and he started running down a list of how much each country owed to America. But that thing was so funny. I've never seen anything like that before in my life. If y'all haven't seen it, go and look when Trump is talking to the different nations. And he's looking at the building. He's like, oh, how much was this building? I'm like, hundreds of millions. He was like, oh, really? All that. He's like, well, let me tell you something. Y'all want our protection? You're going to need to pay your bills. He said this on national TV. He said, y'all are delinquent. And
that's right.
It was, they was looking like, who the hell does this man think he is? They were laughing and looking. Oh, but they was, if you want our protection, we're going to need you to catch up and get you're in the red right now. We're going to need you to settle your accounts ASAP.
But again, still, Quisha, to your point, the NATO alliance, so we are told, was created to protect the United States and our allies against the threat of the Soviet Union. But yet and still, you had Germany purchasing Russian gas, and Trump went in there and say, just don't buy gas from them, buy gas from us. And then they sat up there, and of course, to this day, they accused Donald Trump of being in bed with foreign dictators. But you literally had, top officials, from, I forgot the leader of the UN, Angela Merkel, former was it president of Germany, cozying up. I mean, she was the one who was actually in bed with Vladimir Putin. But then again, Donald Trump offends our allies, but he is fond of foreign dictators. I mean, it's just the twist on reality and the things that the liberal press get away with saying, and the bliggedies, they perpetuate this nonsense in these Black social media spaces to kind of pivot the conversation a little bit. It's just amazing to me, Blanche, saying now all of a sudden, we voted for a convicted felon. Now I'm hearing that, they also saying in Black social media spaces that Donald Trump is going to shut down the FBI and a friend of mine posted something. She posted something trying to trash Donald Trump for his cabinet appointments, talking about how no one that he appointed to his cabinet has gone through an FBI, had an FBI background check run on them. And so she got a problem with that, because how dare Trump's cabinet appointments bypass the FBI? And I don't even know if this is true. This was like a meme she posted, because that's how folks get their knowledge, particularly Black folks. They get their knowledge through memes. Now I'm just saying to myself, okay, now Black folks, they love the FBI now. Now, all of a sudden, RFK Jr., Donald Trump, you see how crazy he is? He's appointing conspiracy theorists to his cabinet. RFK is a conspiracy theorist. But all my life, all I've been hearing about was, or they wouldn't let me forget about what the federal government did to those Blacks down in Tuskegee with the syphilis experiment down there. They wouldn't let me forget about the government's experimentations and the CIA experimentations with LSD and, prisoners out in Alcatraz and all this stuff. Wouldn't let me forget. But now all of a sudden, we love the government. We trust them. We want to take, all the medicines they suggest, the vaccines they suggest, and we just love the FBI, right? The same FBI that's now, I guess, being sued by Ben Crump, representing the descendants of Malcolm X for the FBI and CIA's role in the assassination of Malcolm X. But now all of a sudden, we love this very same FBI. These Black folk, they don't know whether they coming or going, man.
They don't.
It's so interesting. Did you have something else, Blanche?
Oh, no, go ahead. Oh, no, I will talk about the budget. 43%, 45% of the budget goes to health insurance and Social Security. 13% of the budget goes to defense.
Insane.
8% goes to economic security programs, and 7% goes to veterans and federal retirees. And then,
Wow.
Education 5%, transportation 2%, natural resource and agriculture 1%, science and medical research 1%, law enforcement 1%, international 1%, all other 5%. So the bulk of the budget goes to health insurance and Social Security.
That's Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security.
Mhm.
We don't even have the money. We don't even have it.
Don't. We operate in America like California.
Yeah, don't even have it.
Bro.
But where's the economic populism in that? You see, no, you can't do that because then you'll upset seniors, and then you do this. I mean, it'll just because now you've gotten yourself in this trick bag, right? A lot of it started during the heyday of the progressive era. FDR, like I said, everybody knows. Chad and I just did a short mini documentary on it. Once you plant that seed, it's just grown into this huge abomination, and no one has the courage to step up and try to stop it. That bill gonna come due one day because the laws of economics are just as immutable as the laws of physics. Better believe it.
I missed a part of it. I don't think this clip was played, but I'm gonna play this.
The black genocide in the U.S. There's been a black genocide ever since we've been here. And let me tell you something. People on the continent know about the genocide that's happening to us right here. They know exactly what's happening to us. They articulate that very well when you have a conversation with them on the continent. Oh, yes, they know our problems. Yes, they know our issues. It is not a secret.
He always got a piece of chicken in his mouth when he's talking, man. He always sound like he got food in his mouth when he's talking, man. I don't know why that. And he pro-black, but his wife is Mexican. Ironic, right?
Always, right?
His wife is Mexican, but he talking about the black plight. My question is, what genocide is America committing on black people? Can someone please pull up the numbers of some outside force killing black people in America? Can somebody please? He never brings up statistics. They always talk about genocide, but they never pull up stats. I got a friend of mine on social media, 100 Days of Summer, and he puts up all of these. He asks questions like something like he might say, "Okay, do the police kill 10,000 black people a year?" And it'd be like a survey. So he asked these questions, and y'all would be shocked at black. When I tell you, black people living in a whole nother, not world, galaxy. Like what black people think and what's reality is not even close.
It's not.
He put up, he said, a Kyle Rittenhouse killed black people. 80-some%, like, yeah. I'm like, what? Like, they don't even, and he does it right. And I just find it fascinating. I'm like, how were black people making it in the everyday, day to day, and they're this out of touch with reality? Like this is like, how are you this out of touch with what reality is? You able to function? This lets you know that America couldn't be racist, because in no other country could a person that out of touch with reality and that dumb function. It'd be impossible. Like it'd be impossible to not know what's going on and still be able to have a job, a family, a life, and live your best life unless a system was created around you to protect you from your own self. Like it's crazy.
It's like wow. You look and you see this whole world, this whole universe perfectly set up. Everything runs on time, on clock, and you're like, this just happened by itself. Just everything else had to have a creator. Something had to. Nothing. Everything comes from something, but the entire world. It's like what? It's crazy. But here, so in our Bible study this morning, this is what I said. I said, this deception, blackness is a spirit, and it's a blinding spirit, and it's a subtle one. It's one that, it's not like homosexuality or lying or adultery, or, you know, like where you can see the sin, you're like, it's something, it is such a covert way because it's in everything, but we don't even notice it. It's such a covert, nasty spirit. And I don't mean, when I say blackness, I don't mean just being black. I'm talking about those who focus on race. It is it is just such a, it blinds you. You can't see reality. And I was sharing my testimony about when I was delivered from being obligate. You really did feel like 10,000 pounds was lifted off of me. Something came off of me. I felt like I could really truly see life. I felt truly free. I remember that day like it was yesterday. I was delivered. I was delivered. It was a spiritual deliverance. And I truly believe that this is a spirit that is over a lot of people, that is on a lot of people, that has been, that people have been possessed by this spirit. I will go that far to say that people have been possessed by this spirit. And it's because it's so hard to pinpoint, and there's so many kind of layers to it. You've been told this since you were a child, you know, America's terrible. You know, if you're black, you got to do this. And I mean, all of these things, just the seeds, the sowing of those seeds in you, you're going to reap a harvest from that.
Yes.
Whatever you sow, you're going to reap. And this is what it reaps. It reaps blindness. It reaps dumbness. It reaps it's unstable because now you're double-minded. How can you be a king and a queen and then turn around and say that you're oppressed? And you never make the connection. You have this double speak coming out of your mouth all the time. You never make the connection. Wait a minute, I can't be a king and oppressed. How does that work? You never, because it keeps you, it's such a debilitating spirit that keeps you deaf, dumb, and stupid. I'm sorry. I know, Blanche.
Quisha, I just got a visual. You know, based on what you just said, you'll go to the flea market, swap meet, and they'll have a painting of a guy getting beat by the police with a crown on his head. Like,
yes.
But the crown won't fall off, though. The crown won't fall off.
It's crazy. It is so crazy. Like I feel even more led to speak out more about this spirit of what this really is, because it's time. It's enough already. Like, enough. We see the enemy. We see what it is. We have to start literally like rebuking and calling out these spirits. I ain't trying to turn this blackness is a spirit of blindness. It is, Deontay. It is.
But if you think about it, though, that same spirit is what is the problem. Because you think about it, everybody is putting themselves in the position of a black person. So think about, you think about Israel and Palestine. Immediately, Israel white, Palestine black.
Right.
If you think about any situation, America white, all other countries black. Mm-hmm. So the problem is that because it's spiritual, it spreads to everybody else. So now even the libtards, no oppression in sight, but they're gonna make themselves oppressed by putting themselves in all these groups. I'm gonna be a non-binary, and I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this now so I can get into the mold, and then now I can befriend some bleedies and get my street cred up, and now we can, try to conquer the world. But to me, that's the foundation of it. And the foundation of it really starts with how they give us American history. They give us American history from a oppressor narrative. So now, and think about it, it's slavery. Everything springboards off of slavery. White people were in charge. black folks oppressed. Now we're going to have every single narrative coming from that. So now you can't even look and say American history was wonderful and great. You can't even look at it and say America landed the free home. None of that applies no more. It's all been reduced to the Bliggities were in chains, and now everybody else got to suffer. Now everybody else that even has a semblance of what the Bliggities went through, okay, you black. Think about how black folks just add everybody to the fold. Think about how they just welcome open arms. Anybody that says I'm oppressed, I'm out, that they welcome them in. I'm like, but the Palestine thing, I'm like, if y'all was in Palestine right now,
knock your head off.
Rocks at y'all. They be like, get the like them folks they go for real. Y'all crazy.
And this is why, you know, Chad is on something so deep with like the civil rights thing, because with the civil rights, it is the legal way that everybody gets to now participate in this oppression, you know. And then, and the other thing that I was thinking about is, you know, how when the enemy goes to Eve, his appeal to her is more knowledge, right? Like, oh, did God really say that? Like, I'm about to give you some new game. Like, I'm going to enlighten you. The whole education system, which you're talking about, how we learn history, that is why, this is my own theory, but that is why the focus is in the schools. Because if I can get you to change your perspective, your mind, if I can get you to believe something, I got you. I've got you. And that is what the enemy, that's the plan. That's why we have to be born again, and we have to renew our mind, because when you renew your mind, now you have true information. You're dealing in truth and in reality. And it is the sword that cuts off the head of the devil. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. This is so deep, you know, it's just so deep, and it is so embedded in the minds of so many people, well-meaning people, some of them well-meaning. Some people really do believe that, you know, this system is out to get you and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, if if slavery is the problem, why would you want more government then? Like, why would you want more of the system that enslaved you in the first place? I don't know.
Yeah. So I want to get closing remarks like 10:30. I know it's getting late for Quisha. I got to dip soon too. I don't know what happened to Chad, but
I don't know.
Y'all want to give closing remarks, or y'all want to close this? If not, I need to give closing remarks so I can go. I guess I go first. Just diversity, right? And just to piggyback on some of the last things, the last things that you all were saying. I mean, that's what Blanche brought up, the thing with the trans and the whole non-binary thing. You know, this is a more recent attack, or a mode of attack from the Marxists, particularly the ones in education. Like Quisha just brought up education. They want to give whites an outlet so that they can become allies in the struggle. The New Left in the 1960s, led by the infamous Herbert Marcuse, in his essay on liberation, and another essay he wrote. He's famous for a lot of essays. You all familiar with One-Dimensional Man, Repressive Tolerance, these kinds of things. And of course, he said that the new proletariat would be the quote ghetto population, right? He talked about, and what he meant was, he talked about using blacks to overturn America, and the coalition would occur, or the unison had to occur between what he termed these kind of upper middle class white intellectuals had to team up with the ghetto population. And so you had the white feminists on the other hand. You have the civil rights movement, along with the Black liberation movement, Black power movement, and you have the dialectic, if you can call it that, in those two opposing factions. But the synthesis between those two was the Black feminist movement, that was started in the early 1970s. And, most, if not all of these women were in fact lesbians. This is why they also added not just sexism and racism and classism to their whole mode of operation, but they added something called heterosexism, which added a totally different dimension. But this whole idea, when you're talking critical race theory and intersectionality, right, from the 80s, from Derek Bell and Kimberly Crenshaw and Cheryl Harris and some of these other characters, prior to, or we wouldn't even have such a thing had it not been for Black feminism, because the white feminists didn't understand what it was like to be Black. And of course, the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement was dominated by misogyny. And so you had a ton of Black feminists, lesbians, who started this whole thing. And, hence where we are here today. And that's the kind of diversity that we're talking about. But the whole point of this quote unquote diversity was to formulate a new proletariat. Because remember, Derek Bell, the father of critical legal studies, out of which we get critical race theory, believed that racism was a permanent fixture of American society. We know this from the title of his 1992 book, Faces at the Bottom of the Well, subtitled The Permanence of Race. And the attitude of the Frankfurt School, which, once again, all of these bliggity Black scholars got all of their marching orders, beginning with Angela Davis and right on down through Audre Lorde and Alice Walker and the rest of them, believe that the system, because racism is permanent, that racism, or that America as a country cannot fix itself from within, right? The ideas of the classical liberal idea and tradition of incremental change, self-critique, representative government, individualism, all the things that were shunned, of course, by the Smithsonian Museum of African American History, everything that they shun, though, that's just a trick to get you to buy in to the system, because you will have then been convinced that you are not oppressed when you really are. But so the goal of the intellectual is to show you how miserable you actually are, right? Because so many people are buying into capitalism. Where's the revolution? Well, we have to create the conditions for a revolution. And this is why a lot of Westerners, who majority of them happen to be white, don't want to see their countries overturned, because that's what this whole diversity project is all about. It's about cobbling together this new proletariat to create the conditions that will topple the existing order, bringing it all the way back to the mid-1800s and the predictions of Karl Marx. That's how we're going to do it. So that's what we're dealing with today. You muted, Quisha.
So I guess I'll go. I'll be brief. I would just say that diversity, I think it is the topic and something that we need to be focused on for, I think it's probably, I don't want to say the civil rights of our lifetime, but it is the issue that we need to be focused on, because it's a spiritual thing and it is a natural thing. And those of us that are believers, we certainly have to be paying attention. We have to exercise that muscle of speaking up and speaking out and getting in tune with the Holy Spirit and making sure that we are paying attention in these times, because the enemy is very crafty. He is crafty. These are ancient spirits. Have been around for a very long time, and they have a plan as well. And I do believe that they are using people who are attracted to communism, the left, progressives. I believe that the enemy is working through those organizations and those people who will open themselves up and to be used to carry out these missions. So yeah, stay alert and wise to what the enemy is doing in these times, because I do believe that we are meant to be, God strategically places people in the earth that at certain times, and right now those of us who are able to see, those who have an ear, let him hear. We're here and we are able to see what is going on, not for us to just, come online and talk about these things. Certainly, I do believe that is a part of it, but to actually be in prayer about these things, to rebuke these spirits, to do battle on behalf of our King, our Lord and Savior. Anyway, that's it. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. Let's see. Mr. Blanch.
Well, y'all be simple. I listened to a content creator, and he's pretty good, but he posted a video and he said that he was done with MAGA. He was done with MAGA. And he said he was done with MAGA because he said since Trump got elected, their lives have gotten better and our lives have stayed the same. And I thought it was funny because Trump only been president-elect for like a week. And it's just funny that he felt like there should be this big change in a week and he's not even president yet. But again, I mean, it's what he said it. I mean, I couldn't believe he said it, but I just think that how you view yourself is going to determine how you view the world. And if you put yourself in the victim seat, in the I'm downtrodden, in the I don't have enough, in the I'm on the bottom, then when you look out and examine the world, you're going to look at it with the same lens. You're going to see if anybody is failing in life, you're going to assume that they only failed because there was somebody oppressing them, when in actuality, 99.9% of people fail because of how they view life. It's just that, and that's all. There used to be a saying where your attitude determines your altitude, but they stopped saying that. They stopped saying that for when they got woke. But when the guy says this, I thought about it and I said, this is the problem. And the problem is that people are putting themselves in the victim seat. And so if you see a conflict, if you see a disagreement, if you see an argument, if you see a policy, if you see whatever you see, you're saying that it's going to harm those that are quote unquote less enfranchised, but you don't, the flip side of that is it's not going to benefit those that dare to go out here and make something of themselves. And so I just think that people are soft, and that's why we are where we are. And the West is at war, if they know it or not, but they are at war because folks were at the wheel and they thought that if we just be nice to everybody and let folks come on in and it's not how it works. It is a culture war. And I think Chuck has said this before, that there are other cultures that are better than other cultures. There are inferior cultures and superior cultures. It just is what it is. And we got to accept it. And I just think that most folks don't want to accept that. So if I go to your culture and y'all believe in eating babies, then I'm gonna say my culture is superior. I'm just saying it is, and that's all. So at the end of the day, we got to get back to that. We got to get back to saying, listen, this is how it's gonna be done, and if not, you got to get up out of here. I'm sorry, because we getting to the point now where it's getting too crazy and too chaotic. They on the campuses talking about they pro Hamas. It's get y'all pro terrorist groups, and you got the bliggies running around talking about what's wrong with communism. And you got the trans and the gays running around talking about they want to move to the Middle East and they want to be Islamic. I'm like, it's getting too crazy. It's getting out of control, and it's just too much.
It's too much.
Just too much.
It's too much, man.
Yeah. It's crazy. It is crazy, and I do believe that it is those of us who are believers, we have the answer, not in a boastful way, because we are one beggar showing another beggar where the bread is. So, but we do have the answer. We do know where the bread is. We do know where true freedom is. And so I wholeheartedly believe that this season right now is for believers to help people see the light, help them to see reality, because they can't discern it right now. They are blind.
Let me just tell y'all a real quick anecdote. I promise it's quick, man. I was sitting back today. This happened. No, seriously. No, seriously. This is a quick story. This literally happened to me today. I was sitting back, I was kicking it on the couch, passing free time. So I'm flicking through TV, trying to figure out, you just throw something on the TV real quick when I'm relaxing. And I came across Lean On Me, y'all. I was like, this is my movie. Let me watch Lean On Me. So I'm watching Lean On Me, right? Oh, Joe Clark, right? Just imagine if we had a Joe Clark in every predominantly black school in the country. My goodness. We can turn this thing around in a heartbeat. But, you know, it was the scene after he had first day when he took all the ne'er-do-wells and threw them out of the school, right? And then he had that meeting with some of the parents and stuff like that. They were upset at what he had done. And, you know, and the real Joe Clark died like a few years ago. And I think Fox News was the only network that covered his death. And I don't know how true and sincere the movie is to what actually happened. But anyway, and so he's addressing the crowd. And if you remember the scene from that movie, like half of the parents were upset at what he did. And the other half were cheering him on. So it's like a mixed crowd, but he's taking it on from all sides. And you can hear, you know, the faint voices and people yelling stuff at him. And you hear a voice from the crowd called him a fascist. He's like, Joe Clark, you a fascist. And I said, wait, what? I said, people what? Mind you, I done seen Lean On Me like a million times. I know all the lines. And I said, hold on, let me rewind that. And somebody literally called Joe Clark a fascist. I said, you see the status that school was in when he got there? And the fact that he took all the bad elements and threw them out so he can regain control of the school. They said he was a fascist. I thought it was hilarious. I said, wow, how ironic. Anyway, that's my little story.
My favorite part is when he's rehearsing with the kids to sing that song, and they pull the little chubby boy, and he bumps into the piano and he bounces that. That joke is so funny. It is so funny. If y'all have not peeped that part, you gotta see it. It's hilarious. Well, thank you guys.
Kill your brain cells, son. Kill your brain cells. You kill your brain cells. You're doing the same thing as killing yourself.
Don't you?
Just doing it slowly.
You want to jump on? Jump.
Do it expeditiously. Real, man. That's my movie right there. And it's inspirational too, man. So if you fail, he told him this further. If you fail, it won't be it won't be the fault of the white man. It's your responsibility. Yeah. Choice is yours. What a message. Yeah.
They were saying
all
it too.
Right,
all right, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.